All right, Niners lose. Niners lose. Niners lose in Miami. The only thing that was good about this one was better draft position. An ugly loss. Once again, the team that could run it was going to win it, and it was Miami who could run it, and they won it. Brock Purdy with a costly interception. We're going to talk all about it right now. It's the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Let's go. All right, we get it rolling on the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. Pig and a Pickle. Go get some brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Krug sent you. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue on the Monterey Peninsula in Pacific Grove. Call Anthony Catania at 831-521-5264. And, of course, we are brought to you. This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get that first deposit matched up to $200. All right. We're on after the Niners and the Dolphins here, and this one was ugly, man. 49ers, I don't know where you want to start, but, I talked about this in the pregame on KMBR with JD and Adam Copeland. They said, what's the key in this game? And I'm like, it's really, to me, and there's always a lot of factors in a football game, but I looked at this one and just said, it's really coming down to who can run the ball. Because I don't think if Brock Purdy, it doesn't have a run game, I don't think he's going to be able to shoulder this entire load. And I don't know that the Niners are stopping the run all that well. They got a great pass D, but they don't really stop the run. And I didn't expect Greenlaw to play the whole game. Then Greenlaw comes out, he gets hurt early in this game, goes out. And A-Chain had a 50-yard run to put a cap on it, but they were definitely the better running team. Dolphins ran it 30 times, 166 yards, 5.5 yards a carry. Achane went for 17 for 120, 7-1 a carry. He also caught 6 balls out of the backfield for 70 yards. He was targeted 7 times, caught 6 of them. So it was the Achane story, and he was the show, no question about it. 23 touches and 190 yards and a touchdown. And Achane was the factor. The Niners didn't do a very good job tackling him in the screen game. Jonnu Smith did just enough. Tyreek Hill got in the end zone. Malik Washington chipped in. They put no pressure. Where was this a real disappointing game? You're going up against 2 really weak tackles, and you had Nick Bosa back, and you get 0 sacks of Tua Tagovailoa. So they had no pressure on the quarterback, couldn't stop the run. And then offensively, they couldn't run the ball. Could not run the ball. Patrick Taylor, 8 carries for 24 yards, 3 yards a pop. Couldn't do it. Abanaconda, nobody else got any carries except for Debo. Debo had a great game. He had 50 yards or 5 carries for 25 yards, 5 a pop as a rusher, his best rushing day. And then he had 7 catches for 96 yards on 9 targets and a touchdown. He came to play, man. Debo came to play. So, everybody wants to rip Debo. Everybody's going to have to, pump the brakes on ripping Debo because Debo came to play in a big, big way. George Kittle came to play. 8 catches on 9 targets for 106 yards for Kittle. JJ had 4 catches on 6 targets for 51 yards. So, but Brock Purdy threw a key interception late in this game. He was their leading rusher with 4 carries for 26 yards. But the biggest play was the interception that he threw late in the game, and the 49ers lose 29-17. And, man, it's just a very disappointing game. Not that it means anything. The Niners weren't going to the playoffs, and you'd rather lose this game at the end of the year than win it. But I wanted to see Jalen Graham. Didn't see him. I wanted to see Cowing and Pearsall, start to be, featured. Pearsall was targeted 4 times. He caught 4 balls, but he also had 2 crushing penalties and got his ass chewed by Leonard Hankerson, the wide receiver coach, on the bench for those penalties. Let's go around the room, and of course, welcome to the Krug Show. We're always brought to you, as I said, by Pig and a Pickle. The great Kev Kruger up top. The great Frank Red on the bottom there in the dungeon is his show on YouTube. You guys all know Dan Coach Emilio right here, who's taking a time out from baseball duties to join us. We appreciate that.
Rocking the Sharks hat tonight.
Rocking the Sharks hat. Yeah. And there will be an explanation from Dan, who's very popular with the chat. And then, of course, and Dan always will come with some hot takes, so they could be coming. You never know. Could be trading Shanahan. He could be trading Lynch. He could be selling the franchise before the end of the show. So there's a lot to get to. And then don't forget Smitty, our good friend Ryan Smith, is in Mexico. So he may actually jump in from Mexico. JD may jump in. I may jump out at some point for 10 minutes to jump onto the KMBR post-game show on the radio side. So there'll be a lot of jumping in and jumping out, but we definitely want to hear from you in the chat. Let's cut through the crap in the chat, and let's just get to what is your biggest source of discontent with the 49ers?
From this game?
From this game or from this season? Your biggest issue with the Niners from this game or from this season? Are you taking issue with Purdy? Don't pay that man. Are you taking issue with Shanahan? Fire him, trade him, sell him, whatever. Are you taking issue with Lynch? Where the hell is our talent? Are you taking issue with the players, offense, defense, Sorensen?
Let's start with the game though, because the game just happened. I don't want to go. I don't want to go off the game.
Who do you take most issue with in this game and in this season? And why don't we start with you, Kev, since you want to police this thing? We'll let you go first. What is your big issue in the game?
Well, I mean, we've been saying this for a while. I think it's just situational football, because if you look at the box score of the game, the numbers, I mean, the Niners outgained the Dolphins, right? Like Brock Purdy threw for 300 yards. Didn't really feel like he threw for 300 yards, but he did. And he had a better passer rating than Tua. So on paper, the Niners offense looks good. The Niners defense looks pretty good until the fourth quarter, where they always fail. But it's a situational football problem for the 49ers. It seems like, when they need to score, they can't. And when they need to get stops, they can't. And in this game, they did get stops when they needed to. So I'll give them that. They only allowed the field goal to the Dolphins, and then Purdy threw the interception. But that's really been the difference, because statistically, this team looks like a really good team with a really good offense, with good play calling by Kyle. But then when it comes down to executing at the right moment, it just doesn't happen. So,
and turnovers and penalties. Niners were -1 in turnovers. They also committed 11 penalties for 90 yards. So that's losing football. It seems like turnovers, penalties, mistakes. Just an underwhelming performance. Frank, what'd you think?
You know what? Once the 49ers were eliminated from the playoffs, my mentality totally changed. And I started to kind of look at guys and say, well, who's going to be here next year? And start to craft the team. I wasn't worried about, winning or losing necessarily this year. I was looking at individual players to see if they were actually going to be around. Doing that, I was able to enjoy the football game as a whole. The thing that really disappointed me was the stupid personal foul penalties. Smart teams don't do that. And, I go back to the defensive coordinator, Sorensen. Not that he's a bad guy, not that he wasn't prepared, but these are your boys. They're representing you. Offensively, you're down a couple of running backs. Your window for excellence was really, really small. And the defense needed to not only be on fire. I thought they played on fire early on. When Greenlaw went out of the game, that certainly helped them. But I thought they were engaged. With regards to Bosa, you know what? He might be a guy who you might see what the market is ready to offer him, because it wasn't like he wasn't trying, but he wasn't getting to the quarterback. So
it's been all year for the most part.
So those are some of the things that I was concerned about. But I was in the camp that Debo's not finished, and I was happy to see that he came out and played a hell of a game. I've been a big Kittle guy all year. He looks like he has another 2 years at a Pro Bowl level. So if you got a good wide receiver and you have a solid tight end, they also got Sherbert involved. They ran a 2 tight end offense, scored on that. That was something that Kyle Shanahan hadn't done since forever. So I actually saw some good things today from the 49ers. The disappointing thing to me was when Brock Purdy needed to be mentally ready to make the plays, he made the biggest mistake that he could not make. I didn't particularly say that very well, but that was the thing that caught me. I thought he was solid. I thought he looked like a guy who should be paid $40+ million, but making that throw at that particular time in the game was just disgraceful. That was terrible.
Too aggressive. It's funny because I said to Shannon this week, I'm like, Kyle, is there any way you can kind of coach him out of his this extreme aggressiveness that he tends to have, and to take the check down a little bit more often? And he's like, well, I kind of disagree that he's got this extreme aggressiveness. He doesn't throw into double coverage a lot. He doesn't, and it's like the guy is super aggressive. I mean, I there's times you love it. But I mean, you can't deny it. I mean, we can't pretend that he's not. He doesn't take the check down. We saw it today. There were a couple examples where he drove the ball down the field to a receiver who seemed almost covered. That ball that he had somebody open, he went down the field to JJ, and it's like, dude, you got a guy wide open underneath, but you got it to JJ, but it was close. I mean, it easily could have been broken up. So I think his natural inclination is to be aggressive. Kyle didn't seem to want to agree with that, but a lot of these guys in front of the microphones are going to cover their players, especially if they feel like they're being criticized in any way. Danny, give me your takeaway on the game. What'd you think?
Well, I'll just say this, that what you just said about Brock Purdy and his over aggressiveness. This is an issue he had in college too. Threw a lot of interceptions at Iowa State.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not like this is just carrying over. I'll say this. My take with this, not disappointed they lost personally. I'm just watching the game to enjoy the game. And like Frank, I want to see, frankly, I'd rather see him just kind of get guys to play and lose out in a way to get a better draft pick. But I'm shocked that this team doesn't play Jacob Cowing. How do you know? The one thing you need on this team is a breakaway threat. I watch other teams. We saw Tyreek Hill today. Speed. They got A-Chain. They got Mozart. Speed. Niners don't have any speed, and they don't play Cowing. How do you know what you got going forward next year? Why is this guy not playing and seeing what you got in a real game? Here's the other problem I have with Kyle, and I put this out on Twitter, and I put it out because I wanted to be a little bit controversial, of course.
What?
Okay.
I mean, I put
damn
things out
stir
there
the pot.
You rage baiting.
Okay.
NorCal Sports Network reports.
Here it is. I'm convinced the 49ers will never win it all with Kyle Shanahan as head coach. 1 minute to go in the half, 4th down from the 4-yard line, trailing 13-7. He kicks a field goal instead of going for the touchdown. They are eliminated from the playoffs. If you can't go for it in a game where there's no pressure, you'll never win the big one when all the pressure is on you. And
I kind of agree with that too. I mean, I was sitting there going, why, exactly why are you going for the field goal here? I mean, what is to be, right. It's just so freaking conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way too conservative.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching the Cardinals and the Panthers game in overtime. The Cardinals have the ball with just over 6 minutes to go. They're on their own 18-yard line, and it's 4th and 2. And Gannon goes for it because he says, I got to win to be in the playoffs. I lose, I'm eliminated. And if he doesn't make it, game over, field goal. But he goes for it thinking, I may not get the ball back with a chance to win. This could end up in a tie, and I got to win. He goes for it. He makes it. gets the first down. They end up losing anyway. But the balls of the coach to go for it on 4th and 2 from your own 18. I know Kyle would have punted. I said this the other night. We watched Monday Night Football, or was it Thursday night? Whatever the game was between the Broncos and the Chargers. 8 seconds to go, and Denver runs a play. Harbaugh calls timeout with 8 seconds, and they're down 21-10. And he forces Denver to punt. They interfere with the punt returner, 15-yard penalty. He gets a free kick and makes the field goal. Shanahan wouldn't have called timeout with 8 seconds. He did it today. He could have called timeout as clock was expiring. No, you think he would learn from just watching? Why not give your team a chance to score every time? Take the chance. Harbaugh does. He gets the field goal down by 8. It kind of goes into halftime with momentum, and they come back in the second half and win it. That's coaching. I'm sorry. I just don't like Kyle's conservative play. Another thing I'll tell you about Kyle that I don't like is he seems too soft. We saw Devondre Campbell tell him, I'm not going into the game. Look, I grew up with coaches. Both my brothers are coaches. That dude would have been escorted off the field at that moment by any coach with balls. You don't let a player show you up. Kyle should have said, your asses, get out of here now. I don't want to see your face again. When I get in the locker room, if I see you here, you're getting fined. Get out of here. No, it took John Lynch to come down the field and do it himself. Come on. Who has control of this team?
Well, Dan, we could talk about that also. One of the things that I've talked about all week was whether or not leading up to that point, Kyle Shanahan had a one-on-one conversation with Devondre. Should he have to have it? No. I mean, he's a pro. But if I'm the coach of the team, I'm talking to him one-on-one to see where we at. And I know if this guy, can I depend on you? Listen, we're going to start Greenwall, but it doesn't mean that we don't respect what you did. But I need to know that I can depend on you. Not on Thursday. I'm talking Tuesday, Wednesday. And there has been zero clarification. Maybe you can speak to this, Larry, about whether or not that one-on-one conversation happened. If it didn't happen, I actually thought that was on Kyle Shanahan. As a coach, I would have had that conversation because I think that you would not have had the end result had he did talk to him. I do believe that.
Well, I mean, come on. I mean, I don't expect any accountability from the players. There was no accountability from the coaches. We asked about how horrendous Campbell was early in the year, and I got lip service quotes like, "We really like what we're getting out of him." Well, you know what? If you really like what you're getting out of him, and he's playing like hell, then why the hell? If we're in backwardsville, then maybe when you told him to come out of the game, he thought since you're all backwards that maybe he thought he should stay in the game. I don't know, but you know what? I won't call out Shanahan for the handling of Campbell, but I will call out the defense today because if this is Miami's leading rushing total for the year. This was their leading rusher all year. Week 1, 26 yards, Jeff Wilson. Week 2, Achane, 96 yards. Week 3, Achane, 30 yards. Week 4, Huntley, 40 yards. Week 5, Jalen Wright, 86 yards. Week 7, after the bye week, Achane, 77 yards. Week 8, Achane, 97 yards. Week 9, Achane, 63 yards. Week 10, Achane, 37 yards. Week 11, Achane, 73 yards. Week 12, Achane, 32 yards. Week 13, Mostert, 19 yards. That was their leading rusher. Week 14, Achane, this is 2 weeks ago, 24 yards. Last week against Houston, Achane, 41 yards. Oh, and then today, Achane, 120. They just gave up 120 to a back who didn't get 100 yards in any other game this year and didn't break the 50-yard, hasn't broken the 50-yard rushing mark in like 6 weeks. And they just gave him 120.
Miami's kind of soft. I mean, they're not.
But I mean, the Niners' defense was soft. I mean, my God. I mean, 120 to Achan when he didn't go for 100 all year, and he hasn't gone for more than 41 rush yards in like 6 weeks, and you give up 120. I don't want to hear about Sorensen's great defense. I'm sorry.
You know why that's happening, though? Because I was watching the game, and I was saying, okay, so I play defensive line. The defensive linemen get dominated. Once the 49ers defensive line gets tired, it's a wrap. You know, I was looking at that defensive scheme. They only have 2 linebackers. Okay, you put Greenlaw in there, and that shit is not happening. All right? But anybody else besides him, the running backs on other teams have run 6-7 yards. They're in the second level before anybody even touched them. But it happens because the defensive linemen, they get tired and they just get dominated, man. We've seen this all season.
It's been a bad year. It's been an absolutely bad year for sure.
And on the other hand, the Niners can't run the ball. And I feel like that's really hurting their offense because they just can't
they're on their fifth
Patrick
back.
Taylor or not. I don't think Patrick Taylor is really anything special. But before that, they couldn't run the ball, and that maybe that's offensive line. Maybe that's a little bit of Garendo not being very experienced. But if you can't run the ball, especially with Kyle's system, you can't really expect the passing game to carry this team, I guess.
You know, it's a bunch of things. I mean, the team's tired. It's been an ugly year, but I mean, they've got to really start to kind of reassess where they're at. They don't put a lot of pressure on you. You're paying a lot of money for a fullback that you're not good in short yardage. You're not good on the goal line. What would you say Juszczyk even does? I mean, he had a good day today. He had a key catch, but I mean, for the most part, you're paying this fullback for not a lot of great production. Pearsall, I mean, what would you say about Pearsall today? He had one nice catch. They would obviously love to get him involved. They look like very motivated to get him involved. But I mean, if he doesn't know the rules and he can't figure out where to be on the line of scrimmage and get lined up right, it's like he was getting an earful from his coach for sure. And then they're not running it well, but I mean, it's also they lost multiple linemen in this game. Jalen Moore went out. Banks went out with a crushing knee injury. It looked like Banks might have tore something. Which is really a bad break because he's headed towards free agency. Then maybe that means that he'll be back. I don't know, but I mean, it's just that they don't have a lot of dynamic speed. They're on their fifth back. They're not opening run lanes. The quarterback has been turning the ball over. It's as simple as that. Once again, I mean, I went with this stat and they turned it into a KMBR promo for the Niners Nightly. And the stat was when Brock turns it over, the 49ers lose. And when Brock doesn't turn it over, the 49ers win. And when I first heard that turned into a promo, this is like 8 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? The odds are they're going to have to switch that promo because they're bound to be a game where he doesn't turn it over. And, he doesn't turn it over and they somehow lose the game, or he turns it over and they win the game. But no, it hasn't happened. Every time he has turned it over, they have lost. And every time they've won, he's had 0 turnovers. So the thing was taped like 9 weeks ago or 10 weeks ago, and it's still true. Now, the numbers aren't right as far as the overall record, but the point is the point, and it's still a salient point because it's still to this
Larry,
moment.
Does that sound familiar?
What's that?
Didn't we used to say pretty much the same thing with Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, turnovers are a huge part of football for sure. I mean,
the Niners, when Jimmy turned it over, they always lost, and when they didn't, they won. And Is this Kyle's system? Is this kind of the? I mean, Washington turned the ball over 5 times today and won because they got a dynamic quarterback that can actually do things. And if you watch the end of that game, he was special.
Yeah. He was good. He was very, very good.
This was Kyle after the game. I'm just going to play this real quick. This was him talking about the penalties.
The penalties, everything. And just how you feel about what did you tell you guys after the game?
That no matter what's going on, when you have those penalties like that, you don't deserve to win. The offense, the biggest thing was the lack of concentration. And we should have 1st and goal at the 2, no problem. And 3 plays before that, we have 2 guys line up on the ball. And then we overcame it with Devo's play there on 3rd and 8. but we didn't because we had 2 guys off the ball. That was a big one. And then to miss a field goal after that. The defense, 3 drives where you have a personal foul on all 3 of those drives. I think 2 of them ended up in points. But that was stuff that we can control, and I didn't get to see them all, but you can't have 3 personal fouls on 3 drives in the second half and expect to win.
Yeah, and one of those personal fouls, there was one where Demetrius Flanagan was literally blocked violently out of bounds, and Demo pushed the guy lightly on the shoulder as if to say, hey, we're not taking that over here. And then they threw the flag on a ticky-tack push on the back of the shoulder by a DB on a guy who outweighs him by 65 pounds. I don't know. That to me was weak. They lost their composure. This is not the most disciplined football team I've ever seen. This 49er team needs to work on their discipline overall. But very frustrating game. I mean, the penalties that he's talking about, they can't get lined up right. It's week freaking 16. I mean, my God, if you can't get lined up right at this point, what the hell are we doing here? I mean, that just seems obvious to me. But I mean, very, very frustrating loss. At the same time, what I wanted to see the team play hard, and I wanted to see them lose. And they played hard and they lost. I don't think they lost this game because they didn't play hard. But, their equation for winning games, you're not going to win consistently in this league if you can't play situational football. If you're just bad at situational football, you're sloppy and penalties and special teams fuck ups and all this. You can't play like that every week. You might beat some bad teams along the way, but you're not going to beat any of the good teams. And that's really it. I mean, if you look at the schedule this year for the 49ers, look at what their schedule was. They beat the Jets. The Jets are a bad team. They beat New England. New England's a really bad team. They beat Seattle when Seattle was going bad early. They beat Dallas. Dallas is bad.
Mid. Seattle's mediocre.
They beating the
Dallas
Bears. The Bears are bad.
Beating Dallas with Dak is better than it seems.
I would say the best win they had all year was probably week 10 against Tampa. A 3-point win at home against the Buccaneers was probably in week 10 was probably the 49ers' best win. Other than that, all the good teams beat them. The Vikings are a good team. The Vikings beat them. Green Bay's a good team. Green Bay beat them. Kansas City's a good team. Kansas City beat them. Buffalo's a good team. Buffalo beat them. Rams are a decent team. Look like they could be going to the playoffs. Rams beat them twice. So it's like every good team. And you're just not going to win close games. There aren't a lot. This is not college football. There's not a lot of 30-point games. You're going to get involved in a lot of close games. So guess what? The margins matter. Special teams matter. Now, if they have any accountability at all, there's got to be some heads that roll here. You got to say goodbye to Jake Moody. I mean, I'm sorry. He's just he's not making kicks. The kid, I'm watching the kid Ryland from Maryland, who's kicking for Arizona. That guy was on the waiver wire a couple times, I believe, and he's now kicking well. It's like, I don't know what's wrong with Jake Moody. He's got a strong leg, but the consistency is just not there. Schneider, the special teams coach, if there's any accountability, I think he has to be gone. You probably need to get rid of either Sorensen or Staley and change your mix on defense because, your defense gives it up in the fourth quarter, pretty consistently. And what was the stat at the end of the game that they kind of showed? The 49ers are minus 53 point differential in the fourth quarter, dead last in the NFL.
Yeah.
A lot of that's on
situational football, man.
Situational football, pressure football. They can't do it when it matters. But I don't know how you guys feel about that. But to me, Shanahan, come on, Kyle, 11 penalties. This is on you. This is on your coaching. 49ers defensive line. Where was it? Chris, you got Bosa going today. You got 0 sacks and 1 hit on the quarterback. What's going on there? Pearsall's making stupid penalties at the end of the year. It seemed, I felt like it was like Debo and like 3 or 4 other guys who came to play, and everybody else just was like, playing out the string.
Debo had
out rushed 167 to 81. I mean, 81 yards rushing. You're giving up 167. That's not Niner football.
Let's think about Debo. He had a good game. Give him credit. But also, when teams play man-to-man, that doesn't happen. He gets short passes and kind of runs through the secondary with physicality. But I don't take that as this means next year Debo is definitely got to be back. Debo showed that he's not done. Look, Debo in open space is still a guy that's going to be able to get you yards because he's physical and he can run through people. But even when he runs through people, we saw what happened. Didn't he end up kind of hurting his hand? He's constantly getting hurt because he's so physical. He's a violent football player. I don't know. I don't know if that's that great for a wide receiver because they don't last that long in the NFL when you're that physical. I mean, look at most running backs' lifespan. It does. Guys that are just constantly getting hit doesn't last. Debo to me is a guy that you put a good cover man on him, shut him down easily.
I think this is about pride, though, Dan. Debo, I think you're right, but I'm saying that what he did today came out and played with some pride, and
I think he showed up.
Yeah, and that's all I was kind of looking at. Kittle has played that way the entire season. My challenge with the 49ers is, again, the pride. Along the defensive line, those are one-on-one matchups. The opposition is not running twists and all these other maneuvers. They're just bulldozing the defensive line, and then A-Chain is running for 5, 6, 7, 8 yards of gas. And that's coaching, man. That is serious coaching. I mean, you look at Warren Sapp and the defensive line coach at Colorado. Last year, they were pathetic. This year, on a day-to-day basis, they're coaching those guys up. And I think that's what the 49ers do. I'm looking at what Gross Matos. This dude is 6'5", 265 pounds. He looks like an all-pro. If you have a guy, I believe, who was in his tail night and day. I watched him play at college. He dominated at Penn State. There's no reason he should not be a dominant player. But the level of engagement that I look for, I don't always see with him. And I can speak to some other guys along the defensive unit about engagement. So that's my challenge.
I'm not so sure this wide 9 is going to work going forward. They should look maybe to change that and go to the 3-4. The other thing I would just say regarding that, with next week, as you go into the press conference, I would love, Larry, to hear a question asked. Are we going to see Jacob Cowing get a shot, take a look at to see what he may have going into the next year? Just, you got to know. You can't tell in practice and in
I don't think Kyle likes Cowing. I don't think Kyle likes Cowing, to be honest.
He was asked about Cowing this week, and he said he's getting close to earning playing time from scrimmage.
Earning playing time. Yet we're just going to keep throwing it. This is the time to find out whether they've earned it or not, in my opinion. Just let these guys, give them a shot, see what you got, because you know what? You might need to draft different receivers. He was a 5th-round draft pick? That doesn't mean he's guaranteed a spot next year. So why not see what he does in game time? Also, why not let's see what Tanner Mordecai looks like. Why do we got to keep throwing the guys out?
Well, I mean, I'll say this right now. I mean, okay, there's only one speed in the NFL. It's all out. This isn't, there's no load management, and it's not, it's not like baseball where you don't play the day game after a night game or whatever. And it's not like that. Everybody plays all the time. That's the way it is. That's the code. That's the rule of law. Until you're out. Now they're out. So they weren't mathematically out until today. Now they're mathematically out. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to see any more of Fred, Bosa, Greenlaw, Purdy, Kittle. Why? Because you already know that you're going to have to line up week 1 next year, and you're not going to have Brandon Ayuk. So you can't lose somebody right now and then not have them for week 1 because you played them in garbage time at the end of a long season when there was no reason to play them at all. And that's an indefensible position. You can't come back and be like, oh, yeah, you know what? Purdy's now out for half of 2025 because of an injury that he got in, week 17 against the Lions in a game that doesn't matter. No, and no. I want to see all the young guys. I want to see Tanner Mordecai.
Yes.
I definitely want to see Jalen Graham. I want to see Pearsall. I want to see Cowing. Now, most of the young players on defense have already played. So it's not like we're talking about a lot of young players.
Right.
We're just talking about a handful. But more importantly, don't allow your superstar players to, get hurt. I mean, it's kind of like Klay Thompson. He got hurt at the very end of the year, and then essentially he was out for the next year. So
right.
it was
the other thing, Larry,
seasons.
The other thing to this point is that these guys have played into late January and February a lot the last 5 years.
12 extra games in the last 5 years. 12 extra playoff games.
Give these guys a couple games off so that we see the effect what Steph Curry playing in the Olympics has done to this short season. He looks tired and he needs some rest. These guys are, Kittle's what, 8th, 9th year? Fred, Greenlaw, look, let these guys rest. And like you said, let some of these younger guys play. Doesn't mean you're going with Mordecai day one next year. Purdy's your quarterback, but give the guy some playing time. And you know what? Maybe if he balls out in 2 games and you look at him and say, dang, this guy's really talented. Maybe we shouldn't give Brock 60. Let's just let
They're
Brock.
Not giving him 60.
They better not even give him 50. I'm telling you.
I don't think Mordecai's the answer to not pay.
He's going to get 40.
I don't think you're going to figure out. That's not going to.
I don't know. They're unrelated. Come on, they're unrelated. I mean, Tanner Mordecai might be a nice prospect. Let's not go too crazy and be like, oh, well, this is why you don't pay Brock Purdy.
I'm not
as far
saying
as Purdy. Let's get into that for a second, though, because what should the Niners pay Purdy? And here's the thing: there's a right price. There's a right price for Purdy's agent. There's a right price for Parag, who negotiates on the part of the Niners. There's a right price for Brock. I guess the question I would want to ask Brock is the right price the most money, or is the right price the amount of money that pays you a lot and still gives you a chance to win a Super Bowl because you took less to help the rest of the team? I mean, Mahomes makes 45. Brady took less and made it easy for his teams to restructure. Dak Prescott demanded 60 and is now on a team that probably is sentenced to never being able to win.
Right.
It's partly because of that contract.
Yep.
So, and yet you look at Tua and Lawrence and all these guys who are making 50, Goff. And I heard Coward go on this long diatribe about if you make $50 million, there can't be ifs. Well, there's ifs about every one of them. There's ifs about Prescott. There's ifs about Goff. There's ifs about Trevor Lawrence. There's ifs about Tua. There's ifs about all these guys, and they are making 50. So what? We're going to draw the line at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is the only guy that can't be, the bottom line is he the best quarterback in the league? No, he's not. He's not an elite quarterback. He's not one of the top 4 or 5 guys. So what do you want to pay him?
You know what I'm paying him? I'm paying him. This is what I'm offering him and say, hey, we believe in you.
Before you give the number, if that number is shy of $50 million, you're probably going to then bring on a holdout. And then if you got a holdout, you basically, I don't want to say you have no chance, but I don't think there's ever been a team in the NFL that ever won the Super Bowl whose starting quarterback held out of training camp. So the question is this: do you shoot your entire 2025 season, before it even starts, by going to him and saying, hey, we want you at $40 million, not a penny more. And even though Dak set the going rate at 60, we want to pay you 40. And if you don't take our money, you can hold out. And then what do? You go with Brandon Allen? You draft somebody in the draft. You know what I mean? It's like you before you start throwing out big aggressive, before either side gets aggressive with one another, let's take a look at the repercussions for both. Brock asked for
agree.
too much. The Niners could send him packing anywhere, and he's not nearly as good of a career probably somewhere else as he would have here.
Let me throw out a number, because we've talked about a lot of different we've compared him to Tua, we've compared him to Jalen Hurts. I'm just looking through the rankings right now. Why don't we compare him to Jared Goff? Jared Goff just signed a 4-year extension for $212 million. That's $53 million AAV, $170 million guaranteed. I mean, Dad, I know you've compared him to Jalen Hurts, but he kind of is like Jared Goff in a sense, if you're going to look at him as a quarterback that needs players around him to be good. You know, if the Lions can get it done on a Jared Goff contract, why can't the Niners? I'd say that's where your starting point should be.
But basically what you're saying is that you think he deserves a contract between an AAV of 50 to 50 million. Now, some people will say, oh, you guys are looking at the wrong numbers. We get it. It's guaranteed dollars and how many guaranteed dollars and so on and so forth. But, just trying to get your arms around it. There's lots of different ways to structure these things.
What was that contract again, Kev? Guaranteed?
So Jared Goff signed a $212 million contract, $53 million AAV, $170 million guaranteed.
4 years.
113. Yeah, 4 years. 113 million fully guaranteed.
All right, here's what I would offer Brock. And I think you have to have a plan. And part of that plan, like Larry's talking about, is there going to be a holdout? This is why I want to see Mordecai play. Because you got to know, do I need to draft a quarterback next year? Do I need to go in the offseason? Because I'm going to probably offer Brock about 4 years and 160 to 170 range. And I would go about probably 3.5 of those years guaranteed, maybe. So you're a little over 40 to 42 million a year, and probably about 130 guaranteed. And I mean, that's generational money for a guy who has had a good NFL career, but he's also shown that when the talent level is not there, he just looks like an average quarterback. He looks like a top 5-7 quarterback with all of his weapons. So I don't know what you're going to do, but if you sign him to 55, 60 million, you're not going to have the weapons. You need to remake the offensive line. You need to get wide receivers that can separate. Does Brock have the arm to throw it down deep 60 yards in the air to a guy on a go route? I haven't seen it. I've seen some long passes earlier in the season, but as the season's gone along, his arm looks like it's not fully healthy to me. I'm seeing a lot of throws that don't have a lot of zip like they did in the beginning of the season. I don't know if I want to pay a guy and invest $50, $60 million a year and have 170 guaranteed wrapped up in a guy. Do I know that arm's 100%? I don't know. I don't see it on the field. I'm seeing a lot of passes that are off target. I'm seeing some sporadic play trying to make something happen. Was he scrambling for his life, and he looks like he's running around, and he's not as athletic as some of the quarterbacks. Now, yeah, Goff's slow, but Goff also, you pay Goff because you got that great offensive line and he's accurate.
But who do you want to go to? I mean, it's not about, hey, how does he compare to Josh Allen? It's not about that. It's about who can you get that's any better at what price. So you don't have to pay Brock Purdy. You don't have to pay him, but you need a quarterback. There's going to be, they're not going to cancel the season for you next year. There's going to be a season, and then you're going to have to find somebody, and there's going to be pressure to win. And then
it's not coming from the draft.
Yeah, and that person's going to have to roll in and make it work without Ayuk and with Debo most likely coming back as a sacred cow, who's the head coach loves. So, it's like you got a guy coming back who makes big money, has a big ego, who doesn't separate against man coverage, but the head coach loves him. You got a second-year wide receiver who hasn't done a whole lot as a rookie, but the GM thinks he's going to be great because he picked him. So you've got kind of a loaded
You
situation.
got a poor offensive line.
You got a bad offensive line right now. I mean, it's a bottom third of the league, kind of an offensive line. And don't give me sack totals and this and that. It's a bottom third of the league. Look at the pressure rate. Brock Purdy's got the pressure rate. It's one of the highest in all of football. So I mean, that's what's going on. You're gonna have to rebuild this thing on the fly. The Niners, I think, are headed towards an offseason where they need their version of the Bill Walsh 1986 draft. And I've looked at, as this pick gets higher and as they lose these games down the stretch, which, way to go, you keep losing because you're going to wind up maybe with a top 10 pick if you lose the next couple of games. I don't think it will be a challenge to lose the next couple of games either because Detroit and Arizona are just better than the 49ers. So I think it's pretty likely the Niners don't win any more this year, probably wind up with a pick in the top 12. And there'll be some exciting players there for sure, but they got to fight that urge to take one of them and just trade back, and accumulate, a draft class of 15 to 20 picks and hope you hit on 80% of them. And if you do, you're probably going to be right back on the top, competing with the best teams in football. If you don't, then it's going to be, some down years and a number of years of down years, but they need volume. They need a volume draft because, I mean, think about it. I was looking at their needs. They need a quarterback. They need a running back. They need a wide receiver. They need a tight end. They need an offensive tackle. They need an offensive center. They could use a guard. They need a defensive tackle or two. They need a defensive end. They need a linebacker. They could use another corner. I mean, it's basically the entire gamut of needs.
Did you guys see the tweet that was put out there by a guy that talked about all the misses, the reason the 49ers lack depth, how many misses they've had? You want to hear the names? There's about 12, 15 names that the Niners have missed pretty much day one, day two picks.
I mean, I don't want to say this person's, taking this from me, but I literally came out in the last week and did a whole breakdown of this. They've missed 20 times, 20 misses in the first 3 rounds. I mean, that, there are other issues this year, right? They've got a terrible schedule and the rest and all that, there's been a lot of things, tragedies, babies dying, people getting shot. I mean, there's been all kinds of real life stuff. But the one thing that they did to themselves is they went 0 for 20 or let's say 20 of 30 on their first, in the last 10 drafts or whatever they've run. They've taken 30 guys in the first 3 rounds. They've missed on 20 of them. It's too much.
They also hired coaches and fired coaches based on fit, not based on actual production. And I think that, again, you coach the players that you have. What I want to see, the 49ers have some talented young players that are not playing up to their maximum potential. So whomever they bring in, that has to be what they do. They have to coach these guys up. You look at the Ravens, historically, they get the most out of their players. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they get the most out of their players. The Green Bay Packers, they get the most out of their players. That you got to coach these guys up. So as much as they have to figure out who's going to play on the field, they got to tighten up that coaching staff, man. They have to do that. Kyle Shanahan, I think, is a very, very good coach. But like Dan said, there is kind of a distant, solemn type persona that he projects sometimes. I actually like coaches who are like, yo, are you with me? More in your face, more connected to the players, because I'm going to tell you something. As a player, there is something to not wanting to let your coach down. If I'm the defensive line coach and one of those defensive linemen has a personal penalty where the guy's on the ground and you're going to roll your fat butt on him, we got to have a conversation. You wouldn't do that to me if you don't want me to fail. You know what I'm saying? So that connectedness and those relationships has to be there. Offensively and defensively.
I agree with you there, Frank, about having a coach that gets in your face. Bill Walsh was the perfect type of coach. He would get in your face, but I remember when they played in the Bengals in the first Super Bowl, he became the butler met the team at the hotel to make them loose and showed up and took the luggage in. Like he impersonated somebody else. Like he was the hotel butler. It was pretty, or bellman, I should say, not butler, bellman. Pretty funny. But you watch Kyle. I don't see top head coaches doing some of the things that Kyle has done. I remember seeing a clip of him a few years ago out with Joe Staley in the offseason. He's on the roof and he's throwing a football and, he's out having fun with the guys. Kyle seems like he wants to be one of the guys.
I mean, he's on vacation in Mexico.
Yeah, I know, but it's just kind of.
Imagine if you had that level of scrutiny in your life.
Yeah, Danny, come on. Seriously, you let your hair down every now and then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I don't have a problem having fun and stuff. And maybe Staley was already retired.
Wait a second. I have footage here of Danny throwing a football at Del Boca Vista. Hold on a second.
Okay. This has got to be somebody. This should be fun.
Wait, where's the HOA video? No. We have to go with the HOA video. No, but I mean, what do you? He hasn't. I'll say this. Is he close to his players? Yes, but I don't think that prevents him from making tough decisions about them. But you know what? It may with some of the guys that he's closest to.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, because you got to make hard decisions.
Checks.
Look what the Niners did under Walsh, Seifert. They let Ronnie Lott go. They let Jerry Rice go. They traded Joe Montana, and they won another Super Bowl because they were willing to make the tough calls with all-time greats. They didn't hang on to these guys, even though they still could play, and they were, teams make the mistake.
You got to stay ahead of it. You got to surf it like a wave, and you got to stay ahead of it. Otherwise, the wave comes crashing down on your head. You're totally right. I mean, you can't have this, everything's about, some game in the past. It's got to be about the game in the future. Don't tell me, Debo, you meant 2019 and no, and no. I'm not saying have no loyalty, but if you show me all of the best personnel people in any sport, whether it was Don Nelson, Rod Thorne in basketball, Al Rosen in baseball, my good friend Ned Coletti, Brian Sabian. There's a Jimmy Johnson in football, Bill Walsh. The best personnel people, there's a relative coldness to their disposition, because when it's time to go, it's time to go. And sometimes you got to cut guys that you love. You got to cut guys that your wife loves. You got to cut guys that your kids love. And that's where I think Shanahan and Lynch are going to have a hard time. Guys. They need somebody to come in there and say, guys, you know what? You guys have done it the right way, but you're in love with the whole fucking room, and it's time to say goodbye. So if you want me to be the heavy, I'll be the heavy. Somebody's going to have to be the heavy and come in and say, you know what? You done. You goodbye. We're moving on. And some of those guys, I mean, they're going to need to get more dynamic at their weapons, better along their offensive line, better along their defensive line. Somebody in the chat said, hey, be careful about Greenlaw. Looks like he's breaking down. I understand that. But, I mean, he's also very much a culture player for them. But it's true. You can't invest in too many injured players or you're going nowhere. So, it's going to take a big off season, and they're going to have to get real. And they're, in some ways, I almost wish they would tackle this like a new regime, where instead of being like, a new regime would just be like, hey, you know what? We're going to move some of these guys on and not be so emotionally tied to it. I get the feeling that there's an emotional attachment to some of these players, and I don't think that's healthy or a good thing going forward.
I'll tell you the other thing, and I know Kyle had a great run with the Niners, and I'm not a guy that says fire him. Okay. I don't believe in you fire him. If you were going to move off of him, you get value. And as I mentioned, trade earlier, but here's the thing. You look at Ohio State, they lost to Michigan. The pressure is on Ryan Day to win a championship. There are reports out there, if Ohio State doesn't win the championship, that he should be fired. The 49ers used to be ran that way. Look, if you don't get us to the Super Bowl, George Seifert, you're gone. The Niners they've lowered their standard because it's like, okay, Kyle's done this, this, and this. All right, we're just going to settle for.
But you can't be emotional, Danny. I mean, Bill Walsh wanted to fire Eddie D wanted to fire Bill Walsh like 4 times, and Carmen Policy always kind of convinced him not to.
But
you don't want to, just because you're pissed or just because you're emotional or just because you're in a down ebb. You don't want to do what they did with Harbaugh, because would we all admit that Jim Harbaugh is a tough guy to like and a tough guy to root for? But you know what? The guy was a hell of a football coach, and you showed him the door, and then you didn't have a game plan post Harbaugh, and you stammered around for a decade. No, that wasn't a decade, but you stammered around for 5 years. You wasted basically 4 or 5 years doing nothing. So don't waste. I don't want to see them waste 4 or 5 years chasing out Shanahan just without. I mean, if you got somebody that you really want to go to, that you're absolutely convinced of, if you're convinced Kyle's not the guy, then be decisive and make it happen. But personally, I think it's more personnel.
There has to be context to this season. Like, I get it. This season it was a complete utter failure, but like, let's not just forget about all the bad things that happened. All the holdouts with Ayuk, the injury to Ayuk, the everything else. Like, I mean, Christian McCaffrey. It's just like it just wasn't
a bad year.
It just was a bad year, and like I understand. I personally feel like I have more criticism now for Kyle Shanahan than I did in the beginning of the season. But at the same time, it's like I don't.
Why is that?
I just feel like some of the I think that offensively there's just been some stubbornness with going. I mean, actually, I want to bring this up. I'm glad you said that, because during the broadcast they showed a graphic. They showed a Venn diagram graphic, and I thought it was really interesting. Did you guys see this?
I did see it. Yeah.
It was. They were comparing Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan's offense to each other. And it's this
some people are big fans of Venn diagrams. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're very awesome. They're very awesome. No, but obviously in the middle,
everybody got that one, but that was pretty good. All right.
In the middle, it's like high motion, fullbacks. But like, if you look at like what separates them, I thought it was interesting. This is kind of like my problem. Is like the thing that separates him from Mike McDaniel's. Mike McDaniel does quick short passes, and Kyle is electing for downfield passing. And it's like, with the personnel grouping that you have, why would downfield passing be your strength? With Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings, tell me why downfield passing and having Brock Purdy throw it up and just hope that Juwan Jennings is going to get separation from a corner that runs 4.4 when he runs 4.7. And you have George Kittle, who's a great tight end, but he's not a burner. You don't have a burner on your team. Why are you electing to be a downfield passing team? And then on the other hand, it's like Mike McDaniel. You watch Tua that whole game. Tua did not have to make that many tough plays. I mean, he made a couple nice throws, but he was able to just dump it off to A-Chain. These little quick, separation routes where someone's wide open and he just dumps it off. And it's just like, that is a game changer for your quarterback. And it's just, I never really understood the personnel decisions with the team that they had.
You make a great point. You make a great point, Kev. And what did Mike McDaniel do? He adjusted because Tua he doesn't want his quarterback sitting in the pocket, getting clobbered, waiting for the downfield pass because of his concussion history. So he's adapted based on situation. Kyle has rarely made situational changes. I don't know. We keep seeing the same type of offense, same plays. A lot of teams have caught up to this. Kyle I don't know who said it recently, but I heard it a week or two ago. Maybe it was Baldinger. I don't know who said it, but said that Kyle's going to have to reinvent himself. Somebody said it. I don't know who it was, but this offseason, he's going to have to.
It's funny that you said that, because let me share the screen here, Danny, because we actually have that soundbite. This is from earlier in the week. We'll play a couple of Kyle soundbites here real quick. Here, I was going to play this one, but this is the one you're talking about. He was asked about his, does he need to reinvent himself? This is an Eric Branch question, so it's about a 30-second question. Here it is here.
You're on the radio. You probably don't listen to sports talk radio. But a popular talking point is that you need to reinvent yourself. your offense is all over the league and everyone's caught up to it, and now you need to evolve or whatever. I assume some of that already happens every year. I mean, do you agree with part of that, or is that just as a coach you're always doing that?
That's what you try to do every single week. That's what you try to always do. But you don't, kind of like the other question when talking about schemes, you don't just say, hey, today I'm going to try to run the wishbone offense and stuff. It's what are the players that you have? What do you believe in? And what gives those guys the best chance to succeed? For a little bit here, we, almost went with the running quarterback, possibly with Trey. You saw a different offense when he got out there. You see different things. You got to adjust your players. I know what I want to do. I think we got the players here to do that stuff. But reinventing yourself, as you ask, that's I did that having a mustache this offseason for a little bit. That's how I would look at that. And I'm totally joking, but it's when it comes to football's that's why I think coaches get a little too much credit too. When a really good scheme is putting the players that you have in the best chance they have to max out and do their best. And that's what we're going to always try to do. And the scheme will change with that.
So that's kind of what Kev's talking about. If they're really going to a downfield passing scheme, they don't have downfield passing type weapons right now. And if you are going to go downfield, where's Cowing? Because he's your downfield speed. You're not using your downfield speed. Yeah, I'll give you this. The other one that there's a little bit of a disconnect with Kyle. The whole thing last week was like, well, it was a tough night to pass and this and that. It was wet and this and that. Well, then why did you have 31 passes and 19 runs on a wet night where your quarterback doesn't handle a wet football? It's like, yeah, if it was a wet night and it was tough to pass and it was wetter, the conditions were more impacting on the ball than we would think. And then why did you pass the ball 30 times and run it 19 times in a 3-point game? You should have run the ball 31 times. So he gets too pass happy. Let me, I'll be right back, guys. I'll be right back. I'm going to jump out, but I'll be back in a couple minutes and we'll finish up. But continue on. Kev, you can run the.
All right. Do you want to do super chats, or do you guys have anything else on the game you want to talk about before we move on?
I want to talk about how much I would pay Brock Purdy.
Go ahead. Yeah, we didn't get to that.
Yeah.
Let me pull up the quarterback contracts just so we can see it too.
Okay.
Yeah. It's right here. I don't know if this is too small. Wait. You see this?
I can't really see it, but you can name them.
I can see it. Yeah.
Well, anyways, continue on. Sorry.
No, I think that Brock Purdy, a lot of people are not talking about this, but I'm sure he and his agent are. The reality is, dude has been working at poor man's rate for the past 3 years, delivering high-level outcomes. And to think that it's a year-to-year proposition, think you're not going to bring that up, it's crazy. So I don't think that it's totally upon management to pay somebody what they did in the past. But I do think that if you're going to have a business relationship, you consider everything. Saying that, I wouldn't pay Brock Purdy more than $50 million. I wouldn't do that. I would guarantee him $100 million. All right? So it'd be a 4-year, whatever, you named it. You guys are talking about it. But the guarantee would be $100 million. That's what it would be. He's proven that he can win with good players around him. That would be my focus. I'm looking at Bosa at this point, and he's had a great career, but at this point, I think you got to really make some assessments with regards to, is he going to be one of the top 5 pass rushers in the NFL moving forward based on his salary? I looked at him today in Miami. His dad was drafted by the Dolphins. He might be somebody who you need to move to rebalance your pay scale. So $50 million is what I would do for Brock Purdy. We love you, but you were the last player drafted. You have some deficiencies. You don't have the strongest arm. I'm not going to be overwhelmed by what the quote market says I should pay you. I'm going to pay you $50 million a year and guarantee you $100 million. And hopefully that's something that you can work with.
That's a good call, Frank. I think, 50 million, I think keeping the guarantee lower, that's probably going to be the hang up for Purdy and his agent, because what's been happening is a lot of this quarterback money is getting the majority of the contract guaranteed. As you mentioned, Goff was like 170 guaranteed out of 218 or something, or 208, whatever it was. Kev, can't remember what the
Goff was 113 fully guaranteed, 170 total guaranteed. So there's obviously the fully guaranteed is like basically like at signing he would get that money if he stopped playing football the next day,
right.
essentially.
Now, if you look at this list, though, with the exception of Dak, every one of those quarterbacks is a first or second round pick, the top 15 guys on there. Watson, Burrow, Lawrence, Jackson, Herbert.
This is an AAV.
Okay. Jackson, Hurts, Murray, Watson, Cousins, Mahomes, Allen, Stafford, Rodgers, Carr. All these guys are number one picks. The only one, what was Dak? Like a third or fourth round pick?
Fourth
rounder, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's the exception.
Well, Dan, there's not a lot of good quarterbacks that are in the late rounds. I mean, who's
right.
the quarterback that's really good?
Exactly. And Brock is showing a little bit of, I don't want to say, I don't know. Like I say, I don't know if he's 100%. My guess is he's not 100% because he is playing. His arm just doesn't look as healthy as it did last year or earlier this year's. So I don't know if it's a shoulder, but whatever. Point is, I don't think you have to pay him top of the market. Now, if he had backed this year up like he had last year, despite all the obstacles that have happened this year, then you got to say, man, you got to pay this guy. He's obviously elite, even when things go wrong and there's injuries. He's still showing. Like, I thought his best game of the year was against the Rams in LA. That game, Jennings caught like 14 passes and they had no other receivers. Ayuk wasn't available. Debo was out. Kittle was out, and he just balled. I mean, he looked really good, but he's digressed since that game.
Well, this team's regressed, Dan. I mean, I get what you're saying 100%, but they had the team's regressed throughout the year, losing Trent Williams. They can't run the ball at all. But back to the contract for a sec. Like, looking at these guys, like, essentially, I mean, you're looking at Patrick. It's just crazy, first off, to see that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, who got paid, they're like 15th. So it's just like is the quarterback market inflated, or is this just the way it's going to go every year? I don't know. But the report was that Brock Purdy was going to get top of the market money. And as a huge Purdy fan, like, if we're going to assume he's getting top of the market money, that might be, a little too rich, because he's not the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, that's what you're kind of saying. I mean, he's not the best quarterback in the NFL. I think he's a really good quarterback, and I think he should get paid, but it has to be something more reasonable. And maybe the AAV will be high, but the total guarantee will be low, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it'll be in Brock's best interest, it would be the total guarantee is much higher, but maybe the AAV is a little lower, and the total money that they're actually paying him, or the years, it's less years. But I really do think, like, if you're going to shoot for the stars, like, what is, Brock Purdy's, like, what should he be compared to with his skill set? I would compare him to Jared Goff. And I would give him that money, $53 million a year.
Kev, can you pull up Anthony Merkovich's comment at 557?
Yeah.
I mean, Jared Goff was the dude in college, though. This is a top tier talent. This is the guy who took his team to the Super Bowl. He took the Rams to the Super Bowl. Now, he went to Super Bowl, right, with the Rams, I remember?
Yep, yeah, he did. He was the number one draft pick.
Yeah,
he lost to Brady.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is a hell of a talent. And his leadership also, he's 6'5". I mean, I wouldn't compare Brock Purdy to to Jared Goff in terms of structurally how they look, how they approach football. The other thing that Goff does really well, his hand movement, like his trickery with the football. He's a very good handler of the ball. He understands tempo. The only deficiency that he has, he's not a great athlete, but he grades high in every other aspect of football. I'm not going to down Brock Purdy because even watching him today, I was like, okay, we got action. If you get the players back next year that are healthy and ready to go, even if they got to matriculate the ball down the football field and not throw a lot of bombs, they can still be successful. The onus is on Shanahan to develop an offense that features 2 tight ends. There's about 5 or 6 tight ends in college football that you can probably get somewhere between round 3 and 5. Even Eric Sherbert today caught a touchdown. The way that you build a physical team is by using your tight end. So there's some of that reinventing myself, Kyle Shanahan talk that you played that needs to happen. But Brock Purdy, listen, $40, $50 million, that's where he is. If he can't accept that, he's going to lose this because
I agree. I agree. I got him in the low 40s, Frank, 40 to 42 personally. Anthony says they need better offensive line, better receivers. He can't play everything. It's not only on him. Exactly, Anthony. If you pay Brock at the top of the market, you're not going to be able to get not going to be able to get those top receivers. You're not going to be able to get the best linemen. You've got to spend money, leave money elsewhere. Look, I go into this negotiation, say, Brock, we got a lot of things that we got to make better. We got to protect you. If we pay you top dollar, we can't go get the best offensive lineman. It's going to take time. To me, if they can afford not, and I know the hang up is, do you want to hold out and ruin another offseason, which does play into the regular season, but you got to know that going in. You got to know that because, look, I'm not letting any player hold me hostage. That Ayuk thing was just a giant fustercluck, okay? It was bad.
I totally agree.
They let that happen.
Yes,
they should have either made an ultimatum to Ayuk at $25 million where they were going to pay him, say, this is it, you sign it, or you can sit all year, or we're trading you, but we're not going to, they had a trade made, and then Kyle ran up to the building and stopped it. So they have to hold their foot. They cannot just let these guys dictate. Hold on. That's why you got to have depth. And this is why, maybe you go draft a quarterback. Maybe you look at Alabama's. I don't know if this kid is going to be this Milroe kid. He's. I don't know if he has what it takes, but I would like to see a QB with some really athletic skills that can be a difference maker.
Here's my only thing about the cap, because I feel like a lot of times when we talk about paying quarterbacks, we're like, we always say it, but we never really talk about it. We always say, like, well, once you pay them, that obviously means that you can't have the guys that you want, right? I mean, the only thing I'll say to that is, like, all these contracts, the way that they work, it's always going to be backloaded. Like, the cap hit is always going to be, obviously his cap number is going to be higher. He's making $1 million a year right now, but it's like, if you pay him, let's say $50 million a year, the first year might only be like 10 million on the cap, or 20 million on the cap. Like, it's not necessarily like the way that the cap works, like, or the way that they use the void years and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be screwed from the get-go, or it precludes them from making any, free agency decisions immediately. But what I will say is that no matter what they pay him, all of this could be avoided from just drafting well, because the draft is the asset. You're getting the assets in the draft because you're getting the players that cost nothing. So yes, if paying Brock Purdy is risky, but what the Niners really, honestly, what they really need to do better is start drafting better, because that's what's going to keep them going. And I feel like we're kind of making a mountain out of a molehill. We're not making a mountain out of a molehill with with Purdy because it's obviously an important decision. But like the bigger thing is like, are you getting the players that are cheap, and are those players good? Because that's what's going to keep.
Yeah, they've got to draft much, much better. I don't know.
You can't
I'm
overpay
just
him either.
Yeah, you can't overpay these guys. You know, you look at that list, that quarterback list, and you see the numbers. The guy, you know, you talk about being worried about Purdy holding out. The guy that really should hold out on that list is Mahomes and Allen, and just say, you know what, I want my deal redone. I'm not playing. Not, those guys are drastically underpaid.
Yeah,
it's probably going to get redone.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes.
What's that?
I said both of those guys' deals are probably going to get redone. You know, they have a way of like turning salary into bonuses, and I mean, you know, these guys get their money. You know.
Yeah, but you know those guys also. Mahomes is like Brady in a way. He knows that if he asks for too much, he's going to lose a lot of talent around him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mahomes, his contract value is $450 million. He's had a 10-year deal, so he signed for almost half a bill. You know,
right? So he may be fine because it's long. What's his guarantee on his?
Well, that's the crazy part. I mean, looking at all these fully guaranteed, his fully guaranteed number is $63 million.
Oh wow.
Which is ridiculously low. That's, I mean,
yeah, he may have to do a Trent Williams because that's why Trent held out because of the guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, they could restructure him, and then restructuring him probably would somehow help their cap situation and convert more of his contract to guaranteed money. But I mean, Deshaun. I mean, Deshaun. I mean, I know I just said I was like, well, you know, you can overcome these bad quarterback contracts if it's bad. Deshaun Watson, $230 million fully guaranteed to the Browns. I mean, that's
going to be tough. The Browns went from a team last year that looked like during the season the best defensive team in football to a disaster in less than a year. They are maybe looking forward. One of the worst franchises in the league. I mean, I got more hope for the Carolina Panthers than the Cleveland Browns right now.
Yeah, you know what? With the Cleveland Browns, though, I think nobody's talking about it because he's such a great guy. But I think that the Nick Chubb injury is more detrimental than even the salary of Watson because they were a running team. And they're not a running team anymore because they can't run. So it puts even more of a spotlight on the quarterback position. And even moving forward, Watson's going to come back because you have to pay him the money. But they don't have a bona fide running back who's on maybe a Hall of Fame trek right now because I don't even know if Nick Chubb's going to be playing football next year because he what is he 60% of what he was when he got hurt.
Well, he had that terrible knee injury against the Steelers last year, and then what happened? He broke his foot this year. Is that what?
Well, he just didn't have the burst. He's kind of like McCaffrey, to be quite honest with you. You know, when he came back, he did not have the burst. I mean, even McCaffrey, his final game of the year, he started off great, and then he was kind of limping to the side. But we can aesthetically see when running backs are right because they jump off the screen, and when they don't, we notice that as well.
You know, one thing we kind of talk about with the 49ers, and we're talking about next year and what they've got to do. We're acting as though whatever they do will maybe get them back in contention. You know, the Super Bowl's at Levi's next year, right? And we're thinking, hey, can the Niners get back there? All these guys are coming back. But take a look around the league realistically and look at the teams that are in better shape. You look at Detroit. They're injured like crazy on the defense. Those guys will come back, and they've got a tremendous offensive line. They got great weapons. Niners have an awful offensive line. You look at the young Packers who are building. You look at Washington. Look what they're starting to build. And Philadelphia, a great offensive line. They got Barkley, who's 234 yards away from breaking the all-time rushing record, surpassing Eric Dickerson. So these teams are up and coming, and other teams are on the rise. While the Niners, we see this in sports a lot where teams are at the top for 5-6 years, right? And then they start to either have to regroup or they go back down for a couple of years. We saw the Rams get a title, and then they kind of had all those salary cap problems, and they had to kind of rebuild, but they're doing it through the draft. They got all these young weapons that they started, and they're building back their offensive line. And the Rams look like a team that is starting to ascend.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Niners might be on the descent. I don't know if you could say, well, it's just a bad year and we're going to come back with CMC and Debo and all the other guys and Trent, and all these guys are a year older and they look like they're starting to break down. So to me, they're
they're definitely descending right now. Like right now, as we speak, they're descending.
But yes, but coming back next year, because guys are going to be healthier, you hope. But are they really going to go back on the ascent, or are they going to?
No, Dan, I think you're 100% right, because the one thing, and maybe we don't talk about it because it's just going to make us all depressed, and we're just not going to want to get out of bed in the morning. But the worst thing, like really the most terrible thing that could have happened this year, was a terrible Brandon Ayuk career-altering injury after you paid him $120 million. That is terrible. I mean, it's like nothing worse could have happened. Like, that is terrible. You just paid him a ton of money that you just fought all season. It screwed your season two ways. It screwed your season because you fought and he was terrible for the first 4 weeks, and then he got injured. And now it's like that doesn't, we're talking about Brock Purdy not being a good contract. That is now probably not going to be a good contract.
You know what? And to that point, I don't blame Ayuk one bit. He protected himself, and it paid off. He was wise to hold on to that. What happens if he got injured with that and he was playing on his 5th year?
I don't blame Ayuk for wanting money. I mean, dude, you got to get paid. It's the NFL,
right?
But I'm just saying that really hurts the Niners, because it's
nothing hurts more, right? Because you paid him, and now he's hurt, and while one of your highest paid guys on your cap in a cap sport is guaranteed to give you nothing. I mean,
Larry,
the biggest stat of the day, just one quick one. The biggest stat of the week was that last year the Niners trio of CMC, Debo, and Ayuk had 40 touchdowns. This year they have 2. But the real depressing part about that is not that the 2, it's that next year Debo's another year older, Ayuk's maybe not playing at all, and CMC's entering the year with 2 permanently damaged, Achilles tendons that could go at any minute. I mean, if I said to you guys, last year 40, this year 2, how many touchdowns does Ayuk, Debo, and CMC account for next year?
Maybe 14.
You're going to say 14? I would probably say like 7.
Is CMC healthy? Because CMC only played like 1 game, 2 games.
Well, he's healthy, but he's also CMC, so he still has chronic tendonitis in both Achilles. So I don't know how many games.
Does that go away? Does that go away? I don't know.
With rest, it does. Yes, you need, for an Achilles tendonitis, you need 4 good months, according to doctors' reports, as I looked it up.
Of like doing nothing,
ago.
Of like
yes, you just need a complete rest off of that. Otherwise,
maybe he'll be okay then.
Otherwise, you risk
maybe 15. Maybe I would say 15 then. 15 to 20 combined.
I think he comes back healthy. I think CMC, if he listens to the docs and stay, that's why I think this knee injury, as bad as it wasn't a horrible knee injury. In a way, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because it kept him off the field for another 5-6 months, maybe.
Somebody has to save him from himself, though. Have you seen CMC's training tapes?
It's ridiculous.
I mean,
absolutely crazy.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
he needs to chill, get healthy, and relax.
Well, this is what he needs, right, Frank? He needs to basically. This is what, December 22nd. He needs to probably not do anything until February, March,
and
just get himself well.
Or something. Yeah, I agree.
Swim and stay in shape. Larry, one of the things we were saying before you just came back in, I brought up the point.
By
Niners
the way,
will talk-
if people say, where have I been? I've not been pinching one off in some bathroom. There's like 19 people. Look at this. Larry's
I know.
open the bathroom window. The dog. No, I went into another digital room to do the KMBR postgame show. So that's why I ducked out, because I'm doing the key. I'm not pitching a growler or anything. It's like, all right. Go ahead, Dan.
we were saying, the Niners we were talking about Brock and the contract and paying him, and versus we were looking at other teams. And I brought up the point, the Niners to me seem like they might be on the descent, while teams that are built to sustain, because the Niners were up for 5-6 years. And now this is a natural thing that teams go through. We saw the Rams win a Super Bowl and then they digressed, but then they rebuilt and they're on the way up again. The Niners may have to go through another year or two of this. They can rebuild quickly. We saw Philly do it, but I think the Niners have so many holes. Look at the teams that are built to win right now. Detroit, Green Bay, Philly, Washington is on the move, coming up. They got the great quarterback, and they've got the personnel. The front office seems to be really run well. And then you got other teams that are, peak starting to go up. The Niners, I think it's going to take a big time overhaul to get
back. It's funny. I mean, I know, I understand that too, because it's like when you don't win, you seem like you're really far away. But when you're on top, it always seems like you're going to be on top forever. I would look at Philadelphia and say last year they had some internal issues. They were losing, Kelsey to retirement. Their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator weren't good, and they felt like they had some bad vibes in their locker room. They brought in Vic Fangio. He totally turned around the defense. They brought in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, a couple of young DBs. And with Fangio running the defense and those two young DBs, they got the best defense in football now. And they've completely turned things around. The one thing I guess I would push back on is this notion that the Niners just could run it back with everybody. Sorensen, bring it on back. Staley, the same guys. It was just that they got hurt. No, it was not just that they got hurt. It's an aging roster. They've missed on a lot of high picks. They don't have those young, talented players ready to step in to replenish their lineup. And you get old overnight. It happens. NFL's, happens fast. So that's really it. They just need personnel. They need personnel across the board, and they need to stop looking at their team and saying, we've got this guy here. Like, we don't need a tight end. We've got Kittle. We don't need a running back. We got CMC. We don't need a defensive end. We got Nick Bosa. You need guys at every one of those positions, because everybody gets hurt in this game. And it's just, you can't right now. They have no backup tight end. They don't really have good backups for Nick Bosa. They don't really have, they used to have two defensive lines. They're not deep like that anymore. I mean, they had Aziz, who used to come in off the bench for Greenlaw or Warner, and that now they started Campbell, and they're bringing Flanagan Fowles and Tatum Bethune off the bench. I mean, that's several levels beneath where they've been in the past. So they just need to hit on a first round draft choice. I mean, I'm sorry, it's amazing when you do hit on a first round draft choice how that helps your football team, because he walks in, all of a sudden he's one of your better players. They haven't hit on a number one draft choice since Bosa or Ayuk. That's a number of years. They've missed on too many picks.
Well, that's the
I don't
thing
know what
too.
the solution is there.
If you look at their players, like that's the one thing I noticed a few weeks ago when I was like thinking about their roster. It's like a lot of teams have a player or two where you're like, oh, that guy, he might be one of the better names that we're talking about in a few years. The Niners have got some good names from this draft, but they're not superstars. I mean, maybe Dominic Pooney will be a perennial all-pro guard, and I'm wrong, but and he looks good. But it's like Renardo Green's a solid player. Jair Brown was like okay player. Like some of these players, like Malcolm Mustafa is pretty good, but like they need to get a first-round bona fide, like really good player. They need
Jamar Chase.
They need a superstar type player.
Yes,
they do.
Lamar Chase.
Jamar.
Jamar Chase. I would love to. He's not signed, right? He didn't sign his contract, did he?
No, but
he had,
Danny's always thinking big.
No, Danny, he had
Dan,
one more year left for this contract.
Let me ask you this.
They're going to sign it.
A few years ago, I want to ask you this because we saw Khalil Mack with the Raiders was like defensive player of the year. I mean, this guy was like, he was the guy, right? I mean, he was Nick Bosa a couple years ago. And then they trade him to the Bears, and he's with the Chargers now, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay. He's not the same player. Would
He's
you
still
consider what's that?
He's still very good.
He's still good, but he's not the guy like he was in the NFL. He was like player of the year caliber guy. And what did they get for him? Didn't the Raiders get a one or a couple of ones for him when they traded him to the Bears?
Yeah, they got a nice haul of picks.
So my question is, would you trade
Bosa?
Yeah, for kind of a haul.
That's what I think. I mean, I think the Niners have to take a look at the entire thing and see what they can do if they go for it, and what they could get for some of their players if they wanted to, as you say, kind of take two steps back and kind of hit a reset. And they gotta explore those markets. They gotta figure that out. Now, it may be that there isn't a trade out there, or it's not cost effective. But I think you gotta consider all options. You absolutely got to consider every option you have. Let's hit some supers because we're already an hour and 30 in, and we got to go pretty soon because Kev's got a hot date. Let's go Caesar, quarterback room.
True at all.
Kev's girlfriend's like, what? I'm not there.
My girlfriend lives like 100 miles away. Like, what the hell are you doing?
What's this hot date?
He's loyal, Larry. You taught him well. Come on.
Yeah, there you go. We were busting my 14-year-old's chops because he's got a girlfriend now too, and we're
from Northgate.
No, she's in different high school.
Expose him, Danny.
Different high school. Oh, she goes to Clayton.
No, Danny, he wouldn't date
Concord
a girl
High?
from Clayton.
Los Lomas. Where's
I
she
said
going?
no to Clayton.
Los
The wrong side of Kirker Pass. No. I won't give away what school, but anyway,
I had a girlfriend when I went to Clayton. I had a girlfriend from Mount Diablo High School.
Yeah, it was not a big deal until your wife found out. Let's go to Caesar. Caesar, the quarterback room, says sign Sam Darnold now. Actually, it says Sam Donald, but I think he doesn't mean Sam Donaldson, the former White House correspondent. He means Sam Darnold, the Vikings quarterback. All I would say is if you expect Sam Darnold is going to give you, without Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, what he's giving the Vikings next year when he's throwing it to Debo and Pearsall, you may want to think again on that. Too Rich says the interception was a bad decision, but get protection. Holy F. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Too Rich, for dropping that F in there. Clarence Beeks, who is my favorite character from Trading Places, says, I took a Brock and wiped my Purdy. Oh, that's not funny. That's not good. Goodfella Taco, number of penalties are an indictment on coaching. I agree. Undisciplined football team. Niner Matt 209. Purdy had the 95 rating, also leading us in rushing. He's everything. Thomas Messina, is it too late to return the Toyotas?
Oh, jeez.
Jesus. Wait,
How awesome would that be if you had guys handing him the keys back going, dude?
Listen to this stat. Listen to this stat. Brock Purdy, when he was in a clean pocket today, 22 of 29 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. No picks.
Well, he had a clean pocket when he threw that last pick.
Yeah.
He did get hit though, right as he threw.
Took a big hit on the last one, but save that stat, Kev. I may want to use that tomorrow when they ask me how would I break down Brock's performance. I'll need that nugget. Pop says I don't want to see Moody on the team next year. Pops, that seems mean spirited, and I'm with you. Niner Matt 209 says you like that, Danny. Danny's going to steal that. He's going to steal that. That's going to appear like Wednesday with Lou Marston on the NorCal Sports Network. Niner Matt 209. Purdy would have more time to throw if we just parked 5 Toyotas in front of him. Sequoias or Tundras? We don't care. Gold Tau says Jimmy 0.2 instead of 2.0. Oh, man. People are bitter. Thomas Messina, 3 things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and Kyle never getting a ring. Ouch. Thomas talked to Grant Cohn yesterday. Jason Chayer says, see the Lions faked fumble? That team is having fun. Well, that was an incredible play.
That was crazy.
It's fake. We're stumbling down, and then,
that was that TD pass to Laporta.
Yep.
Yeah.
Though, you know what? If push comes to shove, I would take Buffalo, and I would take Philly and Green Bay. I like them a little bit more than Detroit. I think Detroit is a great story, but something tells me Detroit. Something tells me Detroit's going to be. They're going to be that team that like their time comes and goes, and they don't get a ring.
Who's gonna win that game? It's going to come down to possibly week 18 with both teams 14-2, Vikings and Lions at Detroit.
Don't sleep on Green Bay, man. Green Bay looks good to me.
Yeah.
Jason Chayer. Yeah, we got that one. Thank you, Jason. Thomas Messina. Pig in a pickle. 341 Corte Madera Town Center. Thank you, Tom. And by the way, I love that. I love the pig there. Look at that. That's a paragraph. Some kind of a what's that? What's the emoji there in the middle?
That's a cucumber. I think it's supposed to be a pickle. So
okay. There was great creativity there, Tom. Thank you.
Bill M. Corte Madera.
Bill M says, not that it would have mattered, but why did Kyle not know they were eliminated before the game started? Cross fingers, Greenlaw isn't seriously hurt. Did Kyle not know that they?
I think he said they asked him about like, oh, you were eliminated. Did you know that? Or he probably admitted it. But I mean, who cares, bro? Let's not pretend that it was like it wasn't even 1%. It was 0.1%. The Rams and the Cardinals would have to lose out and then tie in their last game for the Niners to even have a chance. It was like something crazy would have to happen. It was over, you know.
By the way, some of some of the talk on the content creation game goes way, way overboard. This week, the dialogue was surrounded. Kyle Shanahan is an inherently stupid person. Now, I've been around a lot of athletes and a lot of coaches, and I know guys who they fake it with, hey, I got to watch the film or whatever. You can say almost any sequence of plays to Kyle Shanahan from like any year. I literally have called out to him. I've called out plays to him from like the Niners in the Super Bowl, like in 1994 when he was a kid. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's an X slant. Why go? Blah, blah, blah. It's like he's got this stuff. And people are like, yeah, he's not that smart of a person. It's like, guys, you can say that you don't like Kyle. You can say he's too conservative. You can say he's too loyal. You can say he's this, he's that, he's stubborn. He's not good at, grading himself or being self-critical or all these things. You can say all those things, but you can't say he's dumb. He's not dumb. He's not dumb. None of these coaches, none of these players are dumb, and none of these coaches are dumb. It takes a lot of intellect to play football in the NFL. Ask any player. I was doing an interview with Sam Aquinu a couple weeks ago, and he's like, the mental part of this is way harder than the physical part. I said, really? He said, absolutely. Because once you put together 5 or 6 or 7 weeks in a row, and you got different plans each week and different keys and different things, it's like it starts to, it's to differentiate plan to plan, game to game, down to down, what we're doing, all the different formations, all the different memorization. He's like, you're memorizing stuff every week. He's like, I'm staying in on Thursday nights with like my book, like sitting there, like I got a test on Friday because it's that challenging mentally. He's like, mentally, he thinks it's more challenging than physically. And we all know how challenging it is physically. So this whole Kyle Shanahan's a dumb person. It's like, dude, that is nothing further could be from the truth. I mean, this guy is absolutely one of the smartest coaches I've been around, and his recall is amazing. Actually, Titus Moeller, should Brock Purdy lose money for these interceptions, or is it the O-line? Overall, it's just about it's about what I don't know that any one interception, but it's just your overall performance is absolutely going to matter as far as your compensation. So, yeah, I think it absolutely matters. As far as I don't know if the 49ers or if their confidence in the players sways with one pick, but it absolutely matters. Los says, Larry, how would Kenneth Grant from Michigan look in a Niner uniform? He would look 6'6", 330 and pretty awesome. There are very few guys that move at 6'6", 330 like Kenneth Grant, and he's probably going to be a mid-first-round pick. And he's not Mozzie Smith. He's a hell of a player, so I like him a lot. Jacob Gordon says, better remember how to draft an impact player out of the first round. It's been a while. Yeah, seriously. And that, in a nutshell, is kind of the problem. Real OBJ CDT. If O-line holds up, does Brock Purdy make the layer throw to Jennings?
Somebody said Shanahan.
What do you guys think? What do you think on that one? Does he make that throw? I'm not even sure which. Is he talking about the what? Is there an exact throw he's talking about there?
I don't particularly know I don't know what he's talking about.
I don't know which one he's referencing, but there were a few throws there. Go ahead, Danny. You were going to say something? Oh, okay. Hold on. Bill M says, when is Kyle going to earn his time? Stupid thing. I'm not sure what that means. Keyshawn McMillan says, 49er fans need a reality check. The O-line is terrible. Absolutely pathetic. Football is won in the trenches. You don't deserve anything. You know, if there's a theme of this year, guys, it's that Buffalo's really good. Their O-line's good. Kansas City's really good. Their O-line's good. Detroit's really good. Their O-line's good. Minnesota's really good. Their O-line's good. And when Darisaw went out, they went out and got Robinson from Jacksonville. So, I mean, Green Bay's offensive line's really good. The Chargers' offensive line is gotten a whole lot better. So, absolutely. The Ravens have a strong offensive line. There's no question.
What I was going to say is you're talking about Kyle not being dumb. I would say he's not dumb, but he's stubborn.
Oh, there's no question he's stubborn.
Yeah, he's definitely stubborn.
He's very stubborn. But to say he's like limited intellectually is just, just categorically false. Daza 0187, just because other teams are dumb enough to throw away money on a quarterback doesn't mean we should. Brock is nowhere near elite. No, he's not elite, and nor should he be paid an elite amount of money. But is Tua elite?
No.
Is Herbert elite? He's 500. If you're one of these guys that thinks Herbert's elite, that tells me how you evaluate quarterbacks.
Well, I'll tell you this, Larry, about Herbert. I like the Chargers to win a Super Bowl before the 49ers. They've got two great offensive tackles. They got a great head coach now, and they're building. I think they're more on the ascent than the Niners because they already have the key pieces in place. You've got the quarterback. You got the two bookend tackles that are young and Slater and Alt. That I would much rather be the Chargers than the 49ers going forward.
I hear you. I don't know that I would disagree, Danny, to be completely honest. Daza 0187. Goff has 30 touchdowns. Brock has 22. Does he have 22? I thought he has less. Or maybe he's counting rushing. Yeah, Goff also has the best line, one of the best receivers going healthy, the best receiving tight end in the game, two of the best running backs in the game healthy, at least until this week with Montgomery. I mean, there's no question. Goff has had a tremendous year for sure. Perfect Blackness Senior says, no, we have him for another year. Make him prove it. But Shanny needs to prove it too. His in-game and roster situational awareness is a real problem. Okay, so Perfect Blackness, this is kind of like last year's deal with, hey, let's make Ayuk play on the fifth-year option. It sounded like a really good, viable alternative. But in reality, the people around the team would tell you that's not an alternative. That was never really an option. And I kind of think that asking Brock to play in a lame duck situation as your starting quarterback for next year is also one of those great things to say, but in reality, I don't think it's an option.
I'll say
this about Brock.
Totally true.
I'll say this about Brock. I don't see him as a guy that's gonna. Now his agent might be different, but I don't see Brock saying I'm holding out unless I'm the top paid quarterback. I think Brock would look at this season and say, you know what? I didn't have the greatest season. Maybe I'll take a shorter term deal like Frank said, with less guaranteed. Maybe he gets high 40s and only 100 guaranteed, but it's for 4
I
years.
think if you could do some kind of 3-year 45 with all of it guaranteed, and get him aboard, that would be awesome. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to get more than that. I think he deserves more than that. Not that any of these guys really deserve this money, but this is kind of the way it goes. And I don't know why you would change all the trends of paying quarterbacks would come to an end as soon as it's time to pay Brock Purdy. So it's okay for Philly to pay Tua $55 million, and they've surrounded him with a team that's better than the Niners have this year. But we can't, the Niners can't pay
Hurts?
Brock
$55
$55 million because, Hurts. Yeah, I said Tua.
Yeah.
Hurts. They paid Hurts $55 million, and they've got a good team. They still have a good team. So I don't know. I mean, in an ideal world, he would take a whole lot less for the good of the team. But I mean, that's probably a pipe dream.
I think $50 million. If the 49ers pay Brock Purdy more than $50 million, and they very might do that, I think they're going to be in trouble. I do, because he doesn't run to make plays. He runs to escape pressure. I mean, thank God we haven't seen him take a really, really bad hit, but it could happen. And he's a small guy. He's not all that fast. So when I look at Josh Allen, I have no problem with Josh Allen being aggressive as he is, because I think he's going to be able to walk away from that and still be able to fulfill his investment. I don't think Brock Purdy is going to be able to do that. So if I'm management, I have to be respectful to him, but I got to have a number that I feel comfortable with. And if I have to walk away or do something, then I got to do that. I cannot.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think you have to draw your line in the sand and be smart about it, because it means an awful lot. It's the biggest investment for your football team, and it's kind of the anchor point for your cap. One thing on Brock as far as today's game, and I will not be surprised they didn't say anything about it that I know of in the post game, but I almost guarantee you that when Kyle Shanahan speaks to us tomorrow, they're going to say something about Brock in the protocol. They're going to say something about the concussion protocol, because if you watch that last, on the interception, when he takes that hit, he's getting driven to the ground. And as he's going to the ground, he takes a knee to the back of the head. And it looked bad. I mean, it looked bad. It looked like the kind of thing that would give you a concussion. I bet you anything, $1 to a dime, that he will be in that concussion protocol tomorrow.
If he's not going to play next week,
I don't play him anymore this year.
Please do not play Brandon Allen.
Yeah,
I don't want to see Brandon. You got Mordecai, who could be part of your future. Allen is not going to be part of your future. Josh Dobbs is most likely not going to be part of your future. Play somebody who might be the backup next year. Come on.
Yeah. What I would do is I would say to Dobbs and to Allen, we're going with Mordecai the next 2 weeks. And one week, one of you can be the backup, and the other week, the other guy can be the backup. You'll be the backup, on either week 17 or week 18. But we're starting Mordecai for that exact reason. I totally agree with you, Danny. Thomas Selman says 13 was one of the best on the field today. He had no protection. Still, he threw still threw for 313 yards. Pay him and invest in the O-line. Pressure to blame for the interception. I do believe that if you said to me, okay, this has been a tire fire of a year. Krug, put this thing back together. How do we do it? Okay, this is how we do it. We have to target really tough-minded, foundation piece offensive linemen, and we got to root them out. We got to find the 5 toughest guys that we can find, and maybe you don't need 5, right? Because you got Dom Pooney and you got some guys that you like, but I think you've got to go into this draft. You got to trade back, and you got to find those big nasties, and you got to build that fortress, to build that wall around Brock Purdy. And then I really believe that if Brock Purdy could run the same team that the Eagles have, where he's got a really good running back. He's got 2 or 3 really good receivers, and he's got a big physical offensive line that can kind of lean on their opponent in the fourth quarter and becomes kind of a run dominant type thing. I kind of like the way the Eagles put it together. The Eagles looked like they were headed for a down stretch in the offseason. They bring in Fangio, who's a proven defensive guy. They make a couple of nice defensive additions. They brought in Mekhi Becton at right guard, give him a mauler. They signed Saquon Barkley, and they came out the next year. They got the number 1 defense, and they're running the hell out of it, and suddenly they look like they're Super Bowl contenders again. The Niners need to copy that exact blueprint. Get a proven, big-time defensive coordinator. Let him do his thing. Invest in your defense in the draft, and then build an offensive line around Brock Purdy and be more of a run, play, action, pass team and less of a downfield passing attack. Put less pressure on Purdy, or take pressure off of Purdy by having a big physical offensive line that can dominate. I think that's the route you go. If you're going to go with this quarterback, he's not Josh Allen, so he can't just carry you. So you're going to have to build a big physical run-heavy type offense around him. But I think it can be done, and I think that if you do surround him, I think he'll play high-percentage football, and you'll get those rings that you need.
I feel like I agree, because like I feel like this is kind of like the new, I don't know what you call it, like the meta or like the new strategy within the NFL. Like we see it change all the time and people adopt it. And Shanahan's offense was kind of being adopted around the league. That was kind of the new strategy, the motions and stuff like that. Like this new strategy kind of is like be a dominant offensive line football team, and the Eagles do it so well, and then the Lions copy it, and then you see the Chiefs, they have a really good interior offensive line, and that helps them a ton. And it's like being able to, like, they basically figured out that being able to get, on a 3rd and 3 to run the ball and get a first down 60% of the time, 70% of the time, because you have a dominant offensive line, that is going to win you, because that's going to win you football games, because you're going to be able to convert and keep the drive.
That was my frustration, Kev, last year's draft. The Niners picked Pearsall, I think, at 31? They could have, for Pearsall, I mean, my goodness, you could have traded back a little bit.
Got Zach Frazier.
You could have got Zach Frazier, exactly. He went 51.
He was awesome. Did you see him yesterday against the Ravens?
Yeah.
He was great. Look, talk about the center for the Steelers.
Foundation, what was it the Chiefs took their Humphrey a couple years ago? And look what the
round.
Chiefs. Yeah. Why didn't the Niners? They could have traded Dak. They could have probably got given up their first and moved back into the second, and probably got Cooper DeJean and Zach Frazier because DeJean went like 40th in the second. He was the 40th player off the board. They needed safety help. They don't have a true cover safety, free safety. They got Brown and Hufanga and Mustafa, all hard-hitting safeties, but no cover guys.
Well, they think that, I asked Sorensen about it. He says that he feels like Mustafa could play free safety, but sometimes I wonder if he even understands what questions I'm asking him. He gives me such bland, nothing answers. It's like, it makes me think, are you even listening?
I don't think.
Are you listening to the questions? Yeah, no, he doesn't like me anymore. But you know what? That's the bottom line is, when you're not good and you get called out, why would you like the people calling you out? You know what I mean? It's simple as that. Moises Rosales says, do you all trust Shanahan with a top 10 pick, or should they trade the pick? And if so, for what position? Any players in mind? I think they ought to trade back from the middle of the first round into the bottom half of the first round and start by going for defensive tackles. Walter Nolan is the guy that I really like from Ole Miss. Gigantic defensive tackle, or Kenneth Grant, who's even a bigger bodied guy. But I think, to me, if you could find one interior wrecker to go with Evan Anderson and Malik Collins, I think that would be where I would start. Or, if I found an absolutely, a linebacker that could absolutely fly and make tons of plays, that I was convinced. I love this kid Perkins, who plays for Harold Perkins, who plays for LSU. Great player. You guys should go watch him. But if you could get a great inside linebacker, I'd go that direction if I could.
I can't think of who's the kid who plays for Oklahoma. It's pretty good, too. I can't think of his name right now.
Who plays what?
He plays linebacker. He plays linebacker for Oklahoma.
His name's Danny Stutzman.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's good. He's one of the leading tacklers. And there's a few, big time linebackers out there. Alabama's got Deontay Lawson, who's hurt right now. Michigan's got has a really good inside linebacker. So there's a bunch of them out there, but they definitely could use another tackle machine to go with what they got. All right, let's get through these here. We've got, wait a second. Did we read that one? Yeah, we get that one. We just read that one. We got this one from Real OBJ. Says Eagles almost won with Kenny Pickett today. If you have an offensive line and a run game, you have a great chance to win any game, even with draft busts like Pickett. Amen. Totally. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's build a fortress around Brock with some great weapons and make it really, really easy for him. If they do, and don't ask him to just carry. He's not the kind of quarterback. I mean, we all know this at this point. He's not the kind of quarterback that can just say, jump on my back, I'm carrying you. He's not Allen. He's not Burrow. He's not Mahomes. He's not those guys. But he is a good quarterback that if you surrounded him with a big physical line and a strong running game and let him play action pass off of it and just be aggressive but try to play smart football, lean on his defense and run game, I think he can win a ring.
Well, also let's think
really
about for the people that want the superhero quarterback. That's great and that's awesome. I think everyone should want a great quarterback. But who's the superhero of all superheroes right now? It's Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is like the guy who's considered when the money's on the table, he's the best. What's the one time he lost the Super Bowl? He lost the Super Bowl against the Bucs when his offensive line was horrendous and he was running for his life. And we're talking about the guy that is the superhero. He could not get it done with a bad offensive line. And people will say, oh, it's Brady. Well, he wasn't playing Brady. He was playing the defense, and he was playing the defensive rushers that were in his face all the time. And that's where that famous throw when he's like literally sideways and he's throwing the ball because he's just running all over the place. You can't win football if your offensive line is going to be that bad.
Keyshawn McMillan says glasses guy. What does that mean? Glasses guy. Oh, that's Dan. Oh, I got you. That's Dan. Come on, Keyshawn.
Can't have weapons.
Glasses guy. His name's Dan Cochimilio. He's got a mother and a father. All right. One question. Don't ramble. If you can't have weapons with a $50 million quarterback, then what is Detroit and Philadelphia? You are
Detroit and Philadelphia already had those weapons in place, dude. Already had them. Now, if you pay Brock, you're not going to be able to have the money to go out and get those weapons unless you draft them. But if you're going to go the free agency route and get the top offensive lineman, not going to be able to do it with the money it's going to take. So you're going to have to take some time and rebuild it.
Not a super, but a good one. Bacon and egg breakfast croissant. I really hope the 49ers fire Kyle Shanahan and trade Purdy so we can suck for the next 10 years. So tired of this toxic fan base. It is a little toxic. Clyde says Zach Wilson on this team would be fire. Oh, wow. L. Kurtz, who is to blame? Purdy, G, or Chuck E. Cheese Kyle? Wow. Moises Rosales says, and I rolled my R's for you, if you have a reasonable replacement for Shanahan, the fire Kyle Shanahan argument can be valid. With no case for a viable replacement, it's a mute argument.
Can I say this about the fire Shanahan?
I don't think it's a mute argument. I think what you meant
the
is
fire
moot,
Shanahan thing is ridiculous. Okay,
mute.
If you have a signed head coach for years, he's a viable commodity. If you're going to move off,
Danny
of
wants to trade him.
You don't fire him. You find a trade partner with him and get capital. I'm tired of talking about firing Shanahan. I would never fire a head coach of his caliber because he is valuable. But you know what? If you decide to
trade
move
him
off
in a heartbeat,
if you're ready to move off of him, yes. No,
I will not fire Kyle Shanahan. You want to trade?
Seriously, if you're thinking about firing him as the front office, if you say, you know what, we think our time's done with Kyle, we're going to go in a different direction. Why would you fire him? Why wouldn't you get something for him?
Well, but the assumption is then that he would be willing to go anywhere who would give you like where he lives and where he raises his family, and these are all things that are all matter. The most important thing is whatever the Niners get in picks. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know about that. I don't see Shanahan just saying, get what you can get and I'll go wherever you can go.
But does he have a choice in the matter? Can't he be traded just like a player?
Yes, but it's like if the coach is unhappy, does the new team want him? I'll say this, I wouldn't want to trade any assets for a coach that didn't want to coach in my city. You know what I mean? I'm giving you 2 number ones, and then I found out Shanahan doesn't want to live here. That's not good. Jason Cabrera says Kyle got beat by Mark Anthony. Mark Anthony. Is it the guy who should date J-Lo, right? I guess Mike McDaniels looks a little bit like Mark Anthony. L. Kurt says check Tua's contract because Purdy is better. Big Dad 5-2. Niners should trade all of their picks for 4th and 5th rounders. That way, no more misses in the top 3 rounds. Pay Brock $80 million per year. Okay. John Kimball says Chiefs need Mahomes cheap to pay the refs. Oh my God, they got some great calls this weekend. Zach Charforos says, I read that Jeff Bezos might be buying the 49ers. No, it's not happening. The coach is in the house. He says, I got the Niners having some man-to-man conversations with the core. They needed to take pay cuts. All of them outside of Fred and George. If they can sit Eric down, they can do it with more. The organization needs to respond to this. So that's interesting. He's basically saying that a lot of the 49er players who are making big money should take individual pay cuts for the good of the team. And I think I agree with Coach, and I think that that's viable even. I don't think that, when you're faced with, hey, we could trim you here and there and you could still be here, or we could cut you loose. Certain guys will be like, hey, cut me loose. But a lot of guys will be like, hey, man, especially if they're at where they want to be, they'll be like, hey, I'll take a haircut.
Well, here's the interesting thing. The Niners are not a team right now that's hugged up against the cap at all.
No, they got a ton of cap.
Yeah, they have like $50 million in free cap, right? So
that's what Luchek did this year.
What's that?
Took a pay cut?
That's what Luchek did this year. Cal did that this year.
Right. The one thing is I don't mind pay cuts where guys are taking real pay cuts, but I don't want to see pay cuts where they're extending their them on the cap, and it's just kicking the can further down the road. Now,
good luck to get a player taking a pay cut without an extension, though.
Yeah, unless they're really faced with
being cut,
an uncertain market. We welcome in JD. JD, we're just going through some more supers before we bolt for the door. We only have a few more, but give us your take on the game. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, an opportunity for the 49ers to win the game. I thought Brock Purdy played pretty well overall until the interception. I'm not sure what he was trying to do on the ball that was picked. Obviously, he got hit, and it never got to where it needed to go. So we won't know. I know Kyle said he was trying to throw over the nickel in the post-game press conference. I'm not sure it was going to get there. So I think it might have been a got hit interception instead of a bad decision interception. But yeah, Debo, where's that been? Bottle that up if he's going to be around next year, which Larry, I think we're in agreement. I mean, anybody close to the Niners, every sign points toward him being back next year. They're talking about him as if he's going to be back next year. If he is, got to be more of that Debo than the Debo that we've seen here the last couple of months. And then another game in a season of games where whenever a team has the opportunity to put the 49ers to bed by running the football, they are able to run the football right down their throat to end a game. And the Dolphins did that after the Purdy interception. So again, have to get better up front in terms of the defensive tackles. And George Kittle's still playing great. I mean, what a revelation he's been. I mean, I would have thought coming into this year, if you said, JD, pick a guy among the 49ers skill players that by the end of the year, you're going to be wondering if he's going to be back, or maybe he's lost a step, or it doesn't have it in the tank at the same level. I probably would have picked George Kittle on Labor Day to be that guy. He has been the complete opposite of that guy this season. He has been fantastic for this team, and he was again today. And they need more of that George Kittle that he's been all year. He has been, I think, the biggest bright light for this team this season. has been how he's played at his age, and they may have to carve out a little money for Kittle to make him more comfortable for at least the next couple of years, because he's been really productive overall. So that's kind of the general overarching stuff. I know it's all big picture now with them being mathematically eliminated as opposed to the minutia of why they lost this game. But yeah, let the evaluation continue and let the as we talked about last week, let the time where Kyle can take a little bit of a step back and start to reevaluate some of the things he needs to do better in 2025. Let that begin as well here. Get a head start on it with 2 weeks to go in the season.
Was there any sound that came out of the locker room, JD, that was revealing in any way? I mean, I mentioned to the guys that I felt like on the Brock Purdy interception, when Brock went to the ground, it looked like he took a knee to the back of the head, and I was just wondering if there was any mention about any concussion symptoms for Purdy at all in the post game, or if there was any revelations or anything juicy that you heard sound wise coming out of the locker room.
Yeah, I didn't really see anything among what's popped up there. I know Kyle was pretty ticked, it seemed, about the penalties more than anything. 11 for 90. I mean, really the story of the game, I thought, was injuries and penalties, right? More injuries been an issue all year, and then 11 for 90 and the inability. I thought Kyle was especially chippy about that today, because I think he shifted into.
He's chippy about what there, JD?
About the penalties, like just frustrated because
you saw him throw his tablet. I don't know, Kev. I don't know if you can find the video, but there was video.
Yeah, after the Pearsall plays and then the Moody missed field goal. Yeah,
right. He threw that thing down, and that tablet's not working.
But it's not getting lined up. You know, it's basic stuff that I think makes him look bad. And I think that's why he was so upset about it in the post game, because I think we're shifting. And I think every coach has a realization of, hey, it's not necessarily about did we win, did we lose today? It's not about going to make the playoffs or not, because we know, obviously, at kickoff, we knew the 49ers were not. We knew it 10 days ago that they were not going to be in the playoffs. So I think the shift for Kyle in the lead up to this game is, let's play buttoned up and look well coached. Because I think those things now take on a greater meaning to those who are evaluating Kyle Shanahan. And so when you have a rookie wide receiver that can't get lined up right twice, and it leads to where you have 1st and goal inside the 5, and it becomes a kick that your 3rd round pick kicker can't make from 41 yards. And then you've got, a defensive tackle lined up over the nose of the football, on the line of scrimmage. There was a lot of sloppy, undisciplined, we didn't look ready or well coached stuff today. And so I think that's why Kyle, my read on it was especially bristling at the penalties and some of that stuff.
Yeah. Just speaking of field goals, just watched Brandon Aubrey kick a 58-yard field goal at the half that was good from 65 easily.
Dallas, by the way, leading at half over Tampa Bay, 23-14 Cowboys. On top of that one, Cowboys, now that they are done for the year, suddenly are out to play. Sean McVay and Shanahan both hired in 2017. McVay today clinched his 7th winning season in 8 years. Kyle Shanahan clinched his 4th losing season in 8 years. I mean, I know he inherited a bad team and there were a couple lean years there, but that's kind of depressing to hear. Couple more.
McVay inherited a bad team too. I mean,
yeah. I mean, and then McVay's also had, has won a Super Bowl and has rebuilt his team. And they look like they're closer to winning again. And the Stafford trade, obviously, that helped them quite a bit. Real OBJ says this shows why McVay is better than Shanahan. Stafford threw under 180 yards in 3 of his last 4 games, but McVay's adjustments, they still won the game. These weren't blowouts, by the way. Daza says, Kev, look up Purdy's stats for games decided within a touchdown or games decided in the 4th quarter. He says
Rams started out 1-4. They're 9-6 now.
Yeah. Oh, and then they've redone their line. They lost Aaron Donald. They remade their line. I mean, that's, and it looks pretty good. Perfect Blackness is Krug. Will you ask Shanny why he won't use Purdy's leg more often, given the legs more often, given the O-line injuries? Why not move the pocket more? Why did the play calls seem to reflect a healthy O-line? Is it scheme ideology over reality? I will ask that question because I would like to see the pocket moved more for Purdy. I think he's better in a moving pocket. SPX DER 369 says he's not the guy. Move on. I'm not sure who he is, but probably Brock. It could be Kyle. Dazza says Lions and Eagles aren't paying $30 million plus to a defensive end. Big Dad 5'2", Brock needs to add lifts in his shoes. BA _ Quinn 310 says make Kyle coach out his contract and do not renew him if he doesn't win a Super Bowl. Dale says, do you take a chance on Greenlaw and big money? Injured 2 times already, not looking good there either. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, that's another risky move. I mean, Kev mentioned it with Ayuk, but yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to get some protections on some of these deals for sure. Otherwise, you could drive yourself right off the cliff cap wise. Thomas Messina says, if we get last place, this is our schedule next year: Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Bucks, Colts, Texans, Jags, Titans, 1 NFC North team, 1 NFC East team, 1 NFC North team plus division teams.
It'd be the Giants and the Bears of the
AFC.
2 NFC. It'd be Giants, Bears, Browns in that scenario would be the other 3.
We've gone through a number of topics here. We're going to call it quits because we're 2 hours and 10 minutes in. I know JD just got in. Let's do this. Let's give our final thoughts of this game. If you want to give a game ball, you can give a game ball, but the Niners lost. So I don't know if you want to give a game ball, but final thoughts on this one, guys. Your final takeaway. The Niners mathematically eliminated. Either a thought on this game or a thought on how you want to see them finish out the string. This game, is a frustrating game to watch. I thought they were better than the Dolphins, and the stats were very similar, but 29-17 is the final as the Dolphins win the second half 16-7. Let's go around the room. JD, we'll start with you. Your final takeaway from this thing.
Yeah, I mean, penalties and injuries. I mean, they got to be more buttoned up. I mean, I think it's just it's a bad look. I know it gets more difficult as your best players start to not be available, as has been the case all year, and they lost more guys who have been playing tonight in this one. I'll give the game ball to Debo. I mean, he played well. It does kind of leave me wondering, is this just a matchup thing? Like what made tonight the night that Debo all of a sudden looks like the Debo Samuel that the 49ers have needed all year long and he hasn't been there? Is it the Dolphins? Is it I mean, they just straight lined him up in the backfield tonight like a running back and handed the ball off to him. I mean, it was they really didn't get cute about it. So that's one interesting thing that I kind of filed away. And then, the Brock Purdy conversation is not going away. Depending upon who you talk to, I mean, like they love him. He's going to get paid, but this notion that this is going to be some easy deal to negotiate, given the circumstances, I don't know. I think there's probably some in the 49ers organization guys that are thinking they're going to get a discount because of how he's played overall this year. And I think there's going to be some pushback from Purdy's camp. No, you're not getting the discount that you think you're going to get because of X, Y, and Z, whether it's how he stacks up, Larry, as you've talked about, to guys like Tua and Jalen Hurts. Although interesting, I mean, Tua looked like, Tua, they both played well, I thought, today overall, but Tua in their system played really well today, was in rhythm, I thought. But I don't know. I think that this notion that Brock's going to take the sweetheart deal, I just don't see it. Again, I will be the first to admit I'm wrong, but I feel like we're going to get to March and it's going to be Purdy wants this and the 49ers think it's that. And there's a gap, and then there's going to have to be some difficult conversations that are had. Not to say that it won't get done. I just don't think it's going to be easy based on, his numbers look good today, but then he has the one play where you're at, where's he going with it? And there's some other misses within the game, and the team's success is not what it was. And how do you factor in weapons? So the Purdy debate, I think, fellas, is just getting started. In terms of what he's going to make here moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. Frank, you got a final thought on this one?
Yeah, I just want to see this team continue to be engaged. I thought they were engaged early on. Many of the problems that I see, particularly along the defensive line and overall defense, I think is coaching related. All of my coaches, Hall of Fame type coaches I played for, they emphasize uh, mental awareness and mental toughness. And to see some big I don't know, aggressive defensive lineman fall on a guy when he's already on the ground and get penalized 15 yards. That's just unacceptable. That's not the 49er team that I grew up watching. So I think that over the next 2 weeks, I don't care they win or lose. I just want to see a clean football game from these guys because it overshadows, like JD said, many of the positive things that they actually did today. So I want to see more intelligent football from the 49ers.
Danny, you got a final takeaway?
Yeah, I just want to see the next 2 games, all the veterans sit. They need rest. They've played too many games over the last few years. No need to risk these guys getting injured going into the offseason. Sit Kittle, sit Purdy, sit Debo, sit Greenlaw, Warner. Let all these guys get rested up so that they can go into the offseason healthy. And let's see some Jacob Cowing. Let's see some Tanner Mordecai. Let's just see what some of these guys have, what you got to evaluate to see if these are players you want to keep going into the next season, or do you need to draft another speed wide receiver if Cowing isn't it? Let's see if Mordecai's your backup quarterback next year, or do you need to draft or go after somebody in free agency? I don't want to see Brandon Allen. I don't want to see Josh Dobbs. Let's play for next year. Forget this year. You're mathematically eliminated. Play the young guys. That's it.
Kev?
Yeah, I mean, my kind of takeaway from this one is I think people have been claiming this for a while, so I'm late to the party, but I would say, hey, let's change our philosophy on offensive linemen. Let's not just be the people that are, or let's not be the team that says, oh, you know what, we can find good guards in the 4th round, in the 5th round, so we don't need to take one. I think this is the new NFL. The new NFL is, are you big up front? And if you're big up front, you can run the ball down any team's throat. And right now, the 49ers can't run the ball at all. And it's ruining their offense. I really think it's ruining their offense. And yeah, Brock Purdy is quick. He's not like he doesn't have cinder blocks for feet. He can move around, but it doesn't matter. You should still have a good offensive line. Like it's helped Jalen Hurts immensely. It's helped Jared Goff immensely, and you can win that way. So I think the takeaway from this game should be let's bolster the offensive line and go from there.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, the one thing that you should feel great about is you should feel great when you have the ball inside the 10. And yet when the 49ers have the ball inside the 10, as a 49er fan, do you find yourself feeling great? No, you don't feel great because you don't feel like you can score a touchdown. And sure enough, they had 1st and goal inside the 7 or at the 7. And they went Debo misdirection run for 3. Now it's 2nd and goal from the 4. And then Purdy got flushed, threw it away after he was harassed. Then on 3rd and goal from the 4, they have to pass again. I mean, you have to be able to run the ball in from inside the 5-yard line. So, why have a fullback on your roster if you don't have somebody you can plow ahead to in short yardage? I mean, the Niners carry a fullback, an expensive one at that, and they're still horseshit in short yardage and on the goal line. Those things can't continue. That can't continue. No more field goals. That 21-yard Jake Moody field goal should have been a touchdown. That 13-10 game should have been 14-13 49ers at the half.
Yep.
Going in the second quarter. They had to score a touchdown there. And then the penalties, just too many penalties. I mean, illegal formation on Pearsall, illegal formation on Pearsall on two plays on that 6th drive, and then the missed 41-yard field goal. And the special teams coach, nice guy, see ya. Jake Moody, nice guy, see ya. There needs to be some accountability here. They need a big-time defensive coordinator. I've never seen a defense whose stats are more fraudulent than this defense. They do all kinds of things except for win. And they're minus 53 in the fourth quarter, point differential wise, partly because their defense folds like a cheap suit in the fourth quarter. So
that and they don't score touchdowns.
Kyle, you've got an undisciplined football team. That's what I would say to him. You have an undisciplined football team. And while you think I'm pointing the finger at you, I'm pointing the finger at you too, John Lynch, because you missed 20 times in the first 3 rounds. And that's why we're at where we're at. So Lynch to me is most to blame because you don't win without players in this league. All the rest of it was too much to overcome. But if they hadn't missed on 20 picks in the first 3 rounds, they could have withstood a lot of the tragedy and things that happened to them this year. They didn't have enough.
Question I have for you on that, Larry.
Yeah.
And this is more, I guess maybe we'll never know the true answer to this. You're saying Lynch, who is truly making the decisions in that draft room when their picks come up?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. John Lynch is the general manager. Kyle's responsible for the final 53-man roster, and John Lynch is responsible for the 90-man roster.
But is John Lynch more of a is he more of a figurehead, or is it because is Kyle picked John Lynch? Who's in charge of personnel? Because I know Lynch's title is personnel, but is he truly is he a figurehead?
It's like anything else. If somebody wants to come out and say it was me, then they will blame them. And if not, they all want to stand shoulder to shoulder. They all get blamed.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we'll ever hear that Lynch is saying, no, it's, I'm responsible. Lynch is going to say it's me, but otherwise he looks foolish because he's not even needed.
It's a group effort. I mean, there's scouting departments. It's not just one person.
Yeah, also, Danny, these scouting meetings, they just had their off-season, their in-season scouting meetings. So they have a whole group of meetings. You have road scouts, and they're the ones. In any good organization, you're listening to the guy who's on campus. You're listening to the guy who's talking to the people on campus. So
I think the guy they're going to miss the most is Adam Peters.
I'm not saying that. I'm not putting this all on Lynch. I'm just saying Lynch is the boss. Lynch is the boss. It's on him. I'm not saying it's him. But overall, they need to hit at a higher rate. It's just it's not there's no, nothing fancy about any of this. You've made roughly 30 picks inside the first 3 rounds since you took over as the general manager. You've hit on 8 to 10 of them, and you've missed on 20 to 22 of them. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. That needs to be better. So we start there. Then it's about accountability. How do we get better? And then it's them examining their processes and maybe adding another voice to the room, maybe changing their process. We'll see. They had a very good draft last year. They need to replicate that this year, and even more so.
I also think that when you look at this team, probably the biggest loss to this team is CMC, because before they got CMC in 22 at the trade deadline, the offense was kind of wasn't that great with Jimmy G. Then Jimmy gets hurt. Brock comes in. Brock plays all world, but you also have CMC there. All of last year, he's MV Offensive Player of the Year, 20 some odd touch, whatever he had. And then he's pretty much out this year, and the Niners look completely lost on offense. Can't score at all in the red zone.
But Danny, I agree that he's a good player and it's hurt. But JP Mason was 3rd in the league in rushing, in his place. So I would push back on that. I'd say that the guy they really miss is Azeez Al-Shaair and obviously Dre Greenlaw, and then having Campbell and Flanagan Fowles and D Winters. Those guys are not close facsimile of Greenlaw or Azeez. I just think the Niners had difference making inside backers, and then they let one of them go, another one got hurt, and then suddenly they just had even below replacement level inside backers. And man, when you can't stop the run, you look bad on D, and that's just where they're at. They just can't stop the run. Big Dad 5-2 says, I smell a holdout coming with Brock. I would say the other thing that stood out in this game to me is, you know, I don't. I mean, I like, you know, Deebo Samuel, but I don't get a good feeling for like when he's going to play and when he's not going to play. There's games where he's come out, he's had very little contact, he's taken himself out of the game. We saw it in the playoffs last year, and then there's a game like this where, for all intents and purposes, you know, there's not a lot to play for, and he's out there trying to prove that, you know, he's the best player in the game or whatever. I need this kind of commitment every week. You know, I need this kind of energy and this kind of effort. I feel like I haven't gotten this kind of effort all year from Deebo. I loved it, and it gives me encouragement for next year, but it also makes me go, where the fuck was that all year? You know? And that's just how I think, maybe. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Better. Thanks to all you guys. JD, when are you appearing on the Leader next?
Tomorrow morning show, 6 a.m. with Dieter Kurtenbach, 6 to 10. I'll be on the next couple of mornings at 6 a.m. on Monday and then on Christmas Eve, and also Dubs OT tomorrow in the evening. So a lot of JD in the next 24 to 36 hours. A couple of morning shows and a Dubs OT after the Warriors play the Pacers, who looked pretty good today in Sacramento. I was watching a little bit of that. They smoked the Kings, who were suddenly reeling and competing with the Warriors to try and get Cam Johnson out of Brooklyn.
Ooh, who are the Warriors going to get? Are they going to get somebody? They need somebody bad.
I look, I've said it. A lot of people disagree. I would put Kuminga in a deal for Cam Johnson. Like, again, that the money doesn't work on that. You got other players are going to have to be involved, but make it happen.
I don't want to move Kuminga, but the deal that I would move him in is if I could get Chicago to give me Vucevic, who's a big time shooter, and Giddey, and maybe even Duarte. If I could get that kind of a deal from Chicago, I think I would move Kuminga. I don't want to move Kuminga because I've seen the improvement in 2 years, and I'm just too afraid of what the future holds to trade him. But I do understand the need to get better, and he's definitely the way to get better.
Ask Steve Kerr what he thinks about that.
Yeah. Hey, NorCal Sports Network, we called the Schroeder trade a month ago. When Melton went down, we said, go get Schroeder on December 15th when he's eligible to be traded. I don't know if they were
Who was Kurt talking about, by the way, when he was like,
Jonathan Kuminga?
Kuminga. Was he talking about Kuminga or Pods? Because I thought maybe it was Pods.
It was Kuminga.
It was Kuminga.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was Kuminga.
Wait, what did Kerr say?
Don't give him away. He's like, hey, when you have Steph Curry on your team, you can't take 17-footer contested shots with 12 on the shot clock or something like that, right?
I think Vucevic would be good, but I think they need an enforcer, a guy like Robert Williams that could, get the lob, go up and block shots. Somebody who's physical. They get beat up.
I think they need a bigger guard next to Curry to handle, because Curry's just getting run down, and it worked when there was Steph and Clay. Steph's 6'3", Clay's 6'7". I think it might work if you want to play Steph off the ball, if you had a big point like a Giddey. I know Schroeder is here to do a lot of the same, but they got to somehow figure out a way to get Steph to contribute, but also not wear him out on the ball. Frank, I know you want to weigh in on this. What do you think?
I think that in all Kerr's brilliance, and he's a Hall of Famer, he might be wrong on this one, man. I mean, coaching is an evolving process. One of the things that Cy always says that resonates with me, when you put Kuminga on the floor, you probably can't build a blueprint, but when he plays X amount of minutes, he averages 20 points a game. And from a coaching perspective, you have to teach, all right? But teaching cannot happen unless there's trust. And there's a whole lot of room and experiences to acknowledge why Kuminga might not trust Steve Kerr and why Trey doesn't, and why Steve Kerr doesn't trust him. So maybe you're looking at what JD says, is like, this thing is way down the road. Let's just cut bait. But I think that Kuminga, he still has a couple of notches to go, man. He really does. So It frustrates me because I think it hurts the team. I think internally, I think it causes problems. It isn't by mistake that all of a sudden the Warriors went out and got Schroeder, and Pods is playing 16 minutes a game, and he's not arguing with referees. When he just keeps his head down and he plays good basketball, he can be a star in his role. I'll continue this tonight at 9 p.m. on the Dungeon Show.
Sounds good. Danny, when can people catch you on NorCal Sports Net?
Well, it's supposed to be in about 30 minutes. We'll see if I get everything put together.
What are you guys talking about tonight? Will the great Lou Marston be in the house?
Yeah, Lou Marston will be there. We were going to talk some Giants. We're going to talk about all the players that they missed in so far, all the first basemen that been gobbled up. So
Awesome.
see what's going on. But
everybody give Danny a follow. NorCal Sports Network is his channel. Frank's channel is In the Dungeon Show, just right there. It's in the red underneath Frank. Kev, awesome stuff throughout the week and throughout the season. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Sharp Corners. Thanks to Better for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all of you guys. Until next time, peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.